Let us begin by introducing our noble and titled hero, the son of the empire, Emperor Fabry Blanche Akiston. He was the greatest emperor in history. It was a man with golden hair and blue eyes like precious stones. Thanks to his character and incredible talent, the empire experienced an era of peace. However, this great ruler turned the main character's life into hell on earth. This novella was called The Empress in Captivity. The title alone says a lot. This is a story about an emperor and empress, and the original genre is dark romance. The ill-fated heroine of this novel is none other than the girl we are going to tell you about. An elderly woman asked her if she hadn't thought about marriage yet. Our heroine, whose name is Enya Lockhart, replied that she didn't have time for that. Continuing the conversation, she asked the patient to still take her medication. Enya, having stopped this conversation, once again advised not to throw away the herbs that she gave her. She couldn't tell her grandmother that she was simply trying to save her grandson from the mad emperor. To avoid her fate in the original, our heroine is constantly on the run. At the beginning of the events, the Lockhart family received the title of Duke for their services to the emperor. It was normal for the young emperor and the ducal family to arrange a political marriage. This was done to strengthen power, and there was no love between the newlyweds. However, after the first wedding night, the emperor radically changed his attitude. Previously, he was not interested in the heroine, but then he began to follow her every action, not only where she goes and who she meets, but in general everything connected with her. His twisted obsession led him to become jealous even of her family. The culmination was that he accused his loyal family of treason and executed them all. The emperor turned out to be mad, and did this so that she would be completely in his power. Enya realized she had been reborn into this disgusting novel when she turned 8. When disaster is literally on the doorstep, what can a child of that age do? She felt helpless, but the solution was surprisingly close. The girl was born with the ability to distinguish diseases using her sense of smell. Thanks to this gift, Enya was able to recognize her grandfather's illness at an early stage. She was generously rewarded, and, by developing her ability, she prepared herself for a life on the run. But by His Majesty's decree, the daughter of the Lockhart family must enter the imperial family. However, this decree came 3 years earlier than the original, and she left home. That same day, she took care of everything. First of all, to ensure that all traces were burned, she took with her a pouch containing an endless supply of herbs and a genuine identification document. She didn't want to meet this vile emperor for any amount of money in the world. And now 3 years have passed since our heroine moved from place to place throughout the empire. She often thought about her parents, whom she had to abandon. But it was better that way than to die. The law on resident registration recently changed, and she had to get up and move again. She believed that the law was actually fighting against the aristocrats, gradually stripping them of their power. This order also came 3 years earlier, and she has to go through difficulties. But Enya thought that this law would least affect the southern territories. Count Greenwald's region in the south was the most sparsely populated in the entire empire. She thought this place would be perfect for her, since she was on the run again. It started to drizzle, so she hurried to the house the realtor had recommended. And most importantly, he was even better than she thought, so she went inside and looked around. She was told the house was strange, but in fact there was a sofa, a table, and chairs, everything she needed. This was a better house than all her previous ones. With these thoughts, she walked around the floor. But the realtor's suspicious words about the house having some strange features still worried her. However, there was no better place to hide from the emperor. There was some noise outside that was not drowned out even by the increasing rain. And although she was worried, she still decided to go and see what was going on. Trying to stop her knees from shaking, Enya walked to the door and swung it open. Suddenly, something jumped out towards her and fell. She couldn't believe her eyes. There was a man lying right in the middle of the yard, and the rain was pouring down and thundering. All this together frightened her so much that she almost lost consciousness. But she held on. She couldn't understand what was happening, why this man was in her yard. I thought that maybe this was the reason why the price of this house was so low. In this city, houses were located far from each other, and there may be security problems here. The man continued to lie motionless, so she began to worry. At first, our heroine asked if everything was okay with him, but there was no answer. She tried to push him and felt the smell of rain coming from him. He looked like he had just passed out, and she found it all very suspicious. If she called security, she would attract unnecessary attention to herself, which she didn't need. But at the same time, she couldn't leave a person lying around on the street in such weather. It can only get worse for him, and this will then become a heavy burden on her soul. Our heroine couldn't pretend that she didn't see the sick man right in front of her, and even if she is on the run now, she still has to provide assistance, and first of all, cure her. She thought that you never know in advance. Maybe this person will help her in the future. Perhaps he will be the one to end her miserable life on the run. Having barely dragged him inside, she wondered why he had lost consciousness on the threshold of her house. Then I remembered that in one of the letters, Emma said that she would send a person to her. The maid wrote to her that she would send her a strong mercenary whom she trusted to help her. Emma was like family to her, and the only one who knew about her life on the run and helped her. Maybe then this is the same person whom the maid hired from the mercenary guild. But if this man was sent by the imperial family, then it would be a disaster for her. She decided to try to find out if he had a mercenary symbol and searched his pockets. I was delighted when I found what I was looking for. Moreover, the man had an A rank, which was not bad, because they're usually ranked from D to S, and I even read his name, Dale. In the novella, the emperor's name was something like Paprika, the first Bulgarian pepper, and he was described as incredibly handsome, but that was just the usual cliché. Although this man was also very handsome, people with such looks don't become extras. Enya decided to check. She had already seen that the hair was black, but the eyes were golden. This was completely different from the emperor, who was blonde and had blue eyes. She still wasn't 100% sure, but she decided it was worth curing him. Even if he was sent by the emperor, he would not treat the future empress rudely. Grandfather often repeated that their family motto was to never turn away from those who need help. And she was a very good doctor, so she considered her patient to be extremely lucky. I decided for myself that I would cure him to an ideal condition and fussed about it until the morning. After checking him, I realized that the fever had subsided and the patient's breathing had become regular. I noted to myself that I hadn't been so focused on something for a long time. She hoped that he would soon be able to wake up, and with these thoughts, she fell asleep right there. Coming to, Dale saw his sleeping savior and quickly assessed the situation. His conscience did not allow him to leave her like that, so he carried her to bed on the second floor. The morning had already come into its own when our heroine woke up from some noise. Half asleep, thinking it was the maid, she asked what she was doing. But when she woke up, she finally remembered that, in fact, she had been on the run for 3 years already. Emma was in the duchy and could not carry out any actions here. Looking around, our heroine realized that she was on the second floor. But how? Trying to remain calm, she walked out of the room and caught a whiff of a delicious aroma. It came from the first floor, and when she went down, she saw someone's figure in the kitchen. Then memories came to mind. It was the same man she brought yesterday. She was looking at him furtively from above. Suddenly, he turned around and asked if they were awake. Did he really recover so quickly? And what is he doing in someone else's kitchen without permission? In response to her question, he replied that he wanted to prepare breakfast as a token of gratitude, and he asked her if she usually doesn't have breakfast, and Enya said that it would be good if they cooked it. Then she corrected herself and asked who he was. He apologized and introduced himself as Dale. When he added that he was the master of the house, she froze in complete stupor. She thought about what was going on here, and then it began to dawn on her what the catch was. From the very beginning, she was surprised by such a low price for this house, even though it was in the village. Enya said that it turns out that she will rent the second floor, and he will live on the first. Dale explained that he urgently needed money, but could not move to another place yet. She thought sadly that she had barely managed to find even this place to rent, and she was in such a hurry that she didn't really check the contract, so it's her fault. Our heroine went to the realtor and asked for an explanation for all this mess, but the agent said that everything was explained, and since there were no errors in the contract, the money would not be returned. It turned out that even if she wanted to move, only Dale had a free house. Having found out a little about him, I discovered that he lived here before she became empress. He is known for helping people as if every problem was his own, and he is in good standing. This eased her suspicions a little, but living with a stranger was somehow not very pleasant. In the end, she couldn't find a solution and had to return to Dale's house. Still tormented by doubts, she looked at Dale, who suddenly became embarrassed. After hesitating a bit, he said that if he was a burden to her, he could live outside. That wasn't an option, so Enya asked where he would go in such cold weather. He replied that somewhere, and what could she say when he looked at her with such a look? And how could she kick the owner out of his own house? It was completely shameless. Besides, she knew perfectly well that there were no vacant houses in Greenwald, and then there was a knock. They looked at each other, wondering who it could be at such an hour. She asked if he was waiting for someone. Dale replied that he hadn't invited anyone and added that he would go and check who was there. He advised her to stay inside. Dale opened the door, and a man appeared on the threshold. He looked a little confused and asked if dear Miss Anne lived here. This name was the pseudonym our heroine used after her escape. And Sweet Miss Anne was apparently an arbitrary password that Emma had set. She said that it was for her, and the man said that he was a mercenary and was hired to serve her. When I asked for supporting documents, he immediately provided them. This nondescript mercenary still needed to be housed somewhere, since he had no housing. She would still have to pay for his services, and her budget was currently very limited. Then she looked at the owner of the house, who was much more attractive. Besides, no matter how you look at it, he was also a mercenary, so she made her decision. As I expected, when I asked about housing, the person who came answered that there was none. Smiling sweetly, our heroine said that in that case, she would have to cancel the order. As she closed the door, she quickly calculated the cost she had just saved. Then she asked Dale that he could use the second floor for a year. He replied that everything was correct, and she thought that the maid valued functionality. That's why she specially sent an S-rank mercenary, because she's worried about her safety. But no matter how you look at it, being a person who counts every penny is simply terrible. After talking to Dale, I found out that according to the registration law, her name will not appear. She decided that it was worth hiring Dale, so she would have a personal A-rank protector. He will be able to hide from the law, and the owner of the house is an excellent cook for everything else. After some thought, Enya suggested that Dale be paid a base salary of 1 million krob. And since they live together, she can pay for living expenses separately. After taking out the money, she said that while he was unconscious, she checked his badge. She explained that the amount showed that this was not a regular order, but she was on the run and needed protection. When he asked if someone was threatening her, she replied that yes, it was, and that the person was very powerful. She added that since the task was dangerous, she was offering additional compensation. That amount of money could have bought an estate, so Dale said it was a risky business, especially for her, so he asked her to tell him the details of this order. And he promised to keep everything a top secret, and she thought he was caught. She knew she had made the right choice, and asked him to become her contract husband. This was the real reason. Even the Emperor would not dare to touch her if she was married. Dale asked nervously. This was probably his first order with a wedding proposal. He only had 364 days, she replied. But it was still fictitious. Due to the difficulties associated with divorce, the Empire launched a system of deferment for marriage. Now couples could marry, but they did not immediately become legal partners. Anticipating his question, she said that the truth was that she had already been proposed to, and so she has been on the run for 3 years. But if they get married, she will be safe. Then she said that she wouldn't say anything else for now, since he hadn't accepted the order. The owner of the house looked at her for a long time, sometimes frowning, sometimes as if thinking about something. Realizing that the request was still strange, she said that she would not pressure him, and if he refuses, she will look for another candidate. Then he stopped her. He said that he agreed, and that he would be Miss Enya's contract husband for that period. Already on the way to the temple, Enya spoke to him about the legend of their long-distance relationship, that they split up because of their parents. But Dale made the journey south because he couldn't live without her. He said that he remembered everything, and she added that that was why they were in a hurry to get married. They were on their way to a temple where corrupt priests help eloping couples for a fee. Dale was not surprised when she revealed that she was Lockhart and ran away from the Emperor. And although he said that he was not nervous and was taking all the risks upon himself, this was not true. He couldn't help but be nervous, and our heroine understood him, so she tried to calm him down. She asked him not to worry, because just like that, he found courage for her. So she, if something happens, will do everything possible for him. He was surprised. Dale even asked again, was it for him? It was obvious that he was very nervous. When they arrived, she reminded him once again that their first meeting took place at a ball. He added that they met during a ball in the garden of the Imperial Palace. She thought the garden sounded romantic. She wouldn't have thought it was so sensual. Noticing that he was a romantic, she suggested discussing the details of his past before entering the temple. She said he was from the Pendragon territory in the north and was now a mercenary. She continued that he was an A-ranker from the Black Tail Guild, which was far to the north, and that he had come all the way from the north to Greenwald, the southernmost part of the empire. Nothing could be missed, since they wanted this marriage to be concluded supposedly for love. Dale suggested saying that there was an accident and the dream didn't come true. That's why he dropped everything and came to Greenwald, and it seemed to her that he hadn't made it up. She hoped that everything would work out for him, and Dale suggested that they not delay entering the temple. She wanted to know one more detail, so she asked if he was seeing anyone. She explained that they had to be honest, and he replied that she didn't have to worry, that he has no one, and he is not going to do his job half-heartedly. And in general, she saved him, after which they decided that they could now enter into this marriage. Dale was a little uneasy as Enya told the priest why they had come there. He asked a couple of questions, and our heroine explained that they ran away for the sake of their love. She was a little nervous, and it seemed to her that Dale felt more confident. But he only seemed to be collected. In fact, he understood absolutely nothing. She got the impression that he moved like some kind of tin soldier. After slightly encouraging him with her light touch, she nevertheless led him to the altar. The priest solemnly asked if the bride and groom were ready to take their marriage vows. She heard Dale say that they were ready, and that he had been waiting for this moment for so long. His gaze, his words at that moment seemed so honest and sincere to Enya. And it didn't matter to her that there were no guests, no wedding dress, and even that there was no ring. At that moment, she almost believed that this marriage was concluded out of true love. I couldn't help but tell Dale that he looked like a man who married for love, adding that, although this is a fictitious marriage, they should still take care of each other. However, she left her cloak in the temple, so her husband returned for it. She thought she had chosen the right man. But Dale came back for another reason. He entered so silently that he greatly frightened the priest with his actions. Ignoring the reaction, our hero demanded that he be given a marriage certificate. At that moment, he looked completely different, and the priest did not immediately recognize him. Dale made sure that this was the right document, picked up a pen, and began to finish writing. The priest was furious at such insolence, so he asked what he was doing. But when he saw the name, Fabry Blanche Akenston, written in large letters on the document, he shut his mouth. However, having come to his senses, he still resisted, because he couldn't use that name. He insistently added that a commoner has no right to use the name of the emperor. The priest's jaw dropped as the groom handed him proof of his identity. He knew for sure that the ring with the seal of the Akenston family could not be worn by just anyone. In a frightening and arrogant tone, Dale added that all priests knew what it was, and if he doesn't want to die, he will be able to properly register the marriage. So the marriage took place, and it didn't matter that there was a year of delay. He was Enya's husband. The priest, his voice trembling with fear, said that Your Majesty's will be fulfilled. But the groom reminded her that he was Dale, and sternly advised her to forget about what had happened. Then he took Enya's cloak, which he had prudently hidden in a secluded corner. The sight of the frightened priest satisfied him completely, so he left without hesitation. That's how the wedding ended, Dale. Without looking back, confidently walked out of the temple. For him, the concepts of contract and trial period remained just ordinary words. Now that they had been officially married in the temple, he actually became her husband. Returning to her, he carefully adjusted her bow and threw the cape over her shoulders. Yes, but he had never planned to let Duchess Enya Lockhart go from the start. Now all that was required was that she didn't become suspicious during the delay. Local aristocrats noticed him leaving the city temple and were a little surprised. It was, after all, Mr. Dale, whom Lady Adeline had intended to invite. Lady Adeline also saw him leave the chapel where weddings are held. The fact that he was with an incredibly beautiful woman did not escape their attention, and the first thing that came to mind was that this couple came to get married. The next day, when the news had already spread, gifts began to arrive. Our heroine, seeing the number, could not help but notice that Dale is extremely popular. He tried to deny it, but Enya said that he was a good man and was helping the village. Without knowing why, she added that his appearance alone made him stand out from the crowd. However, she herself had something to hide. And in fact, she attracted more attention than she wanted. She thought that if she used this to her advantage, history could change. There is such fertile soil hidden here that even villains would like to get their hands on it. According to the original, there is a huge field of medicinal herbs in Greenwald. It belongs to Duke Hexagon, but she hadn't seen anything like it while driving along the road. Enya asked if the Duke's men had come to Greenwald, and he replied that he had not heard about it. Then she thought that since the Duke had not yet begun to develop the land, it meant she had a chance, and she turned to Dale with a request to find a plot of abandoned land for her, to which he asked in surprise if she really wanted to go into farming. Having answered in the affirmative, she described in detail where the site should be located. He said that he would take care of it, and as soon as he finished the work, he would immediately return home. Our heroine really liked this man. She was happy that she met him. Dale went to work in the village every day, so she decided to help him at home. However, as soon as she started cleaning the first floor, there was a loud knock on the door. Having answered that he was already on his way, I thought about who it could be. Perhaps from the village again. Two disgruntled individuals appeared on the threshold and asked why she hadn't opened the door. When she asked what they wanted from her, they asked if she had really married Dale. They simply pounced on her with questions, whether she blackmailed him or bribed him. How could Dale marry her when there is Lady Adeline, who has everything? She started asking what her marriage had to do with them when a lady came up and interrupted her. She said that if they continued to behave like this, they would put Lady Enya in an awkward position. Feigning innocence, she asked if the rumors that they were married were true. Having answered that she was Enya, she thought to herself that the main thing was that the Emperor had not sent them. The lady introduced herself as Adeline Kidland, and that she was the daughter of the Viscount who lived next door. She asked me not to be cautious, because she simply came to invite me to a small meeting. Enya thought that the lady was not exactly a neighbor. Her lands extended far beyond the border, so she asked why they wanted to invite her, and the ladies asked her to be respectful. After all, Lady Adeline is almost Lord Greenwald's granddaughter and wants to get to know this place. Then she said that she would like to invite Lady Enya to a modest tea party tomorrow. After all, she is new here and is having difficulty adapting, and therefore we must help her. However, our heroine felt that she was only pretending and not speaking sincerely. Guessing that they wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone, she played along and accepted the invitation. For her, this was even good. She still wanted to be near the estate. She told Dale about the invitation, and he said she didn't have to show up. She explained that the land Dale had found was nearby, and she wanted to see it. Then, her husband suggested that she use the dresses in the dressing room on the second floor. Enya had already discovered this wardrobe and was curious to whom it belonged. That's why she said that if these were his ex-lover's dresses, she wouldn't dare. Dale reassured her by saying that his younger sister had left the clothes behind when she moved out, and that he was too busy with work to think about dating, that he hadn't met her yet. He said the last part so quietly that she didn't hear it, but it didn't matter to her. While Enya was thinking that living with his beloved was not like him, Lady Adeline returned home. She shouted to the whole estate that it irritated her, then attacked her sister. She was furious and, throwing away her purchases, didn't pay any attention to Sophia, and she promised that this year's birthday party would be special. After all, she couldn't allow this low-born girl to take away what she considered hers. The next day, not far from the Lord's estate, she was inspecting a plot of land. This was exactly what she wanted. The plot was huge, and on top of that, it was cheap. But in fact, there were rumors that due to the curse of these lands, the Lord fell ill. That's why it's sold below market price, and Enya has heard something similar. The area was similar to what was described in the original, but there was a certain stench. Nothing was said about this in the novel, and our heroine decided to check. Dale handed her a shovel, which he had grabbed from the carriage with him in advance. She was about to begin when he stopped her and asked her to wait a little. Then, he said he needed to do something before she could dig in the ground. He invited her to sit on his cape, as she would soon be joining the tea party. Enya, touched, said that he still had to go to work today, but he replied that it was okay. But I heard that in high society, the slightest flaw can end in scandal. When he helped her put on her gloves, she thought he was taking such tender care of her. She was so pleased by his concern, but she still began to do what she came for. After peeling back a little of the top layer, she realized that she had been right in her guess. The soil below smelled different from that on the surface. It was fresh and fertile. She wondered why the soil rich in microorganisms was sprinkled on top. She guessed that this was the reason why Duke Hexagon had not yet purchased the plot, and she asked Dale that in order to purchase land, she needed to contact the Lord's estate, to which he replied that no, because Greenwald was now using it for convenience. He said the land belonged to Lord Kidland, and she found that unusual. After all, the huge plot of land located next to the estate belongs to someone else. She found the whole situation strange, both this area and Lady Adeline. She had no idea what was going on here, but she decided that the area was not worth missing. With these thoughts, she remembered that it was time for her to appear at the estate itself. Moreover, this was the very place where she could find out everything firsthand. Our heroine had no intention of staying so long, but they were already awaited at the estate. Dale helped her out of the carriage, and she thanked him for escorting her. He replied that he was always happy to help, and the ladies immediately noticed his unusual smile. Local ladies still believed that this was a forced marriage, but seeing the two of them together, Adeline thought that maybe things weren't so. Then she greeted them. Enya expressed her gratitude for the invitation, but noted Adeline's emotions. She didn't even hide her mood and paid attention exclusively to Dale. Then Enya decided to tease a little and pretended to feel a little sick in the carriage. Dale thoughtfully offered to take her home, but she said she felt better. The lady's face turned blacker than a cast-iron frying pan. She was only holding back because of him. Pretending not to notice, our heroine said a sweet goodbye to her husband. However, she carefully watched every movement of her mistress and was pleased with herself. Meanwhile, Adeline said somewhat coldly that it was time to go inside. Her friends followed her in unison, afraid to lose sight of her for even a second. But our heroine was in no hurry, so she couldn't immediately figure out what had happened. Sophia fell down in surprise, and Adeline asked why she was outside the door like that. Ignoring her whiny sister, the lady announced that everything was ready for tea. But Enya could not pass by the unfortunate girl and sympathetically asked how she was. Along the way, he noticed that although her clothes were worn, she did not look like a maid. And in general, she heard that the Greenwald estate was so poor that they had no servants. At that moment, Adeline started screaming and, without holding back, she attacked her sister. Then she pulled herself together and calmly said that she asked not to walk around alone. She added that Sophia should return to her room, and she happily agreed. Hearing that she could stay at her place, she calmed down and rose to her feet. Adeline was clearly being disingenuous when she examined Sophia's slightly scratched palm. Enya wondered if Sophia was really her younger sister. They didn't look alike. According to rumors, Adeline is almost the Lord's granddaughter. But could Sophia be Greenwald's granddaughter? I thought that if this is so, then it is wrong. My own granddaughter cannot attend the tea party, but an ordinary relative behaves as if she were the rightful mistress of the house. Our heroine caught herself thinking that she had absolutely no idea what was going on here. One of the guests said that she had not seen her here before and asked what family she was from. Then the ladies began to say among themselves that she was the same simpleton who was with Dale. Another one sang along with her that marriage should be approached seriously and not so frivolously. Also, if Dale had married Adeline, he would have been able to leave his job as a mercenary, and if he had a decent wife, she would have let him go to someone more suitable. Looking at the hostess, Enya thought that she had expected a little more from the ladies. Do they really think they can belittle her with these veiled ridicule? Finally, the guests decided to move on to the main event of today's tea party. It was on Miss Adeline's birthday that they began to take turns presenting gifts. Our heroine, of course, was not informed of the true reason for this event. This was done on purpose to make her look like a rude woman who came without a present. Lady Adeline thanked everyone and then turned to Enya, asking what she had prepared. After all, she didn't come here empty-handed after such a kind invitation. Smiling, our heroine thought that the time had come for that very thing. The hostess hypocritically asked the guests not to be so harsh, because it didn't matter. Then Enya said that, of course, she also prepared a gift for this occasion. She knew that no one was expecting this, so she expected this reaction. Adeline asked in surprise when Enya had managed to prepare the gift and thanked her. She chuckled, thinking that she had prepared herself the day they had barged into her house. Just yesterday, she didn't know anything about the birthday, so she was surprised by Dale's question. He asked whether she had already decided what she would give Lady Kidland or not. Surprised, she replied that she knew nothing about it and asked how he knew. After thinking, Dale said that he did not remember her face, but she was Lord Kidland's daughter, and she invited him to her birthday party, and now he thinks that maybe he was wrong. When he decided that since she was being invited to the Lord's estate, it was precisely about her birthday. Enya quickly realized that this fact had been deliberately hidden from her in order to disgrace her. Then Dale offered her a way out, because he just happened to have something to give her, and he offered her to take one thing. She was stunned when she saw what he was offering. I asked where he got such a value. He evasively answered that we paid for one order. Thanks to his help, she managed to avoid appearing rude immediately after arriving in Greenwald. After saying she couldn't wait to see it, Adeline immediately pointed out that it was small. Then she added sarcastically that, as everyone could see, large necklaces suited her better. She said that it was difficult for her to put a price on it, but she would accept it because it was priceless. Enya expected exactly this reaction, but another guest had a different opinion. Miss said, quite rightly, as Lady Adeline said, "This gift is priceless. Our heroine wondered if this guest was the daughter of the head of a large trading guild, and she chirped that she didn't think she would see the angel horn in such a place and asked to give it to her. Then she rushed towards Enya and, approaching, said that she was interested in this necklace. She apologized for being so sudden and asked Miss to give her some time alone. After all, if this is the angel horn, then wasn't this masterpiece the one that created the excitement for pendants in the capital? And now, having looked at it more closely, she can say with confidence that it is genuine. She added that he was too valuable to Adeline, and she could not give him up. Enya noted to herself that the birthday girl was unable to recognize the masterpiece, but only made fun of the size. Realizing she had made a mistake, Lady Kidland said that she really could not accept him. She also said that she remembered something important to do and quickly retreated from the room. Enya thought that this girl managed to embarrass Adeline and drive her away at the same time. 2 days later, this amazing miss appeared at our newlyweds' house. Without hesitation, she asked that he was apparently Dale, whom Lady Adeline was simply obsessed with. After apologizing for the intrusion, she got down to business and asked if they wanted to sell her the angel horn. She rattled off that such masterpieces are rare, and those who own them are extraordinary people. Then she asked, "Enya doesn't plan to sell this necklace to Lady Kidland." Enya replied that no, but a person who realizes his value can become a friend. It was important for our heroine to have more people she could trust, and in honor of the new friendship, she offered to lower the price, and in return asked to share something. The question was about Greenwald's secrets, but the guest was not a local and knew little. Then Enya clarified that she was interested in the Lord himself, because he was ill and could not move. The guest asked that, to put it simply, the miss wanted to know why the Lord was bedridden. After hearing an affirmative answer, she said that Greenwald and Kidland were initially united. But several generations ago, Count Greenwald granted the younger branch, Kidland, the title of Marquise. At that time, the territory was divided for the first time, but close ties between families remained. Thanks to this, the Marquise constantly helped the Count in destroying monsters. But one day, when Kidland was caught off guard, the monsters broke into the Lord's estate. The Count was attacked by monsters and wounded, and Kidland has been helping with his treatment ever since. In return, he received from Greenwald a portion of the land that had long been of interest to him. Enya asked what reason Kidland had for being interested in the wasteland in front of the estate. The guest didn't know the answer, so our heroine said she would try to find out the reason, and she promised her new friend to share information, a valuable resource for traders. At parting, the guest miss asked to contact her at any time. She will help. Taking a mug of cocoa, Enya asked what exactly Dale was doing at the Lord's estate. He replied that he was managing the hunting grounds in case the monsters returned. She thought how they could send such a harmless person to deal with monsters. When she asked if he could take her with him to the estate, Dale replied that he could. And when he asked why, she replied that it was about the land he was looking for her. She smiled and explained that she seemed to have found a great way to get it. The next day, as planned, Dale brought her to the Lord's estate. She thanked him for his help, and he felt sorry that he had to leave her because of work. But Enya encouraged him, saying that she could handle it and that they would see each other at home that evening. The more she looked at Dale, the more amazing he seemed to her. Maybe it's because he's a mercenary and has excellent posture and riding skills. I caught myself thinking that at first glance, he could have been mistaken for an aristocrat. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Adeline watching them. Wondering for how long, Lady Kidland pulled the curtain sharply and wondered why this fox had come again. What is she planning this time? Does this girl really want to interfere with her plans again? After our heroine arrived at the estate, something immediately surprised her greatly. The Lord's assistant said he had heard from Sir Dale that she wished to see the master. The realtor who scammed her with the house suddenly turned out to be her assistant in this house. The man said that the Lord was currently unable to receive guests. Enya replied that she had heard that the Count was bedridden, and that was why she had come. She explained that she was visiting today as a doctor, and that she wanted to look at the Lord's condition. The assistant was very happy at first, but then he became despondent and began to speak sadly. He said that, as she could see, they were unable to pay for medical services, and he even had to work part-time, like that time when he helped her find a house. She said that she was not asking to pay everything at once, and he was interested in the reason for this. Our heroine explained that she could say with confidence that she could cure him, and they can discuss the cost of the treatment itself after they make a diagnosis. The patient's granddaughter was on duty at the bedside. She asked if you were that same girl. The assistant invited her to come in, and she politely said, We met again, Sophia. Coming closer, she asked if she could check on her grandfather's condition first. Enya, relying on her gift, smelled the same stench she had vaguely detected at the tea party. In fact, she was very familiar with the smell and asked when the symptoms appeared. Sophia replied that about 3 months ago he lost consciousness and was unable to move. Noting that 3 months is a long time, Enya said that fortunately she has a cure. After apologizing for his suspicion, the Lord's assistant asked if the drug was reliable. He explained that they had tried many remedies, but unfortunately, nothing worked. Enya reported hallucinations, self-talk, and a characteristic rash on her hands and feet. To top it all off, psychological and physical symptoms appeared simultaneously. When they asked how she knew, Enya replied that her grandfather had the same symptoms, but after timely treatment he recovered. Sophia asked what her grandfather was ill with. Our heroine did not hide the truth and said that it was not a disease, but poison. Therefore, she can say with certainty that the Lord was poisoned. They asked in unison. Sophia started to wail that this couldn't be. Who dared to do this to her grandfather? And rushing to Enya, she asked her to save him, because he was the only one left to her. Our heroine sternly asked if the miss would follow her instructions. She was ready to do anything. She said that it was good then, and asked him to help her by holding his arms and legs. With a quick movement, she began to pour in the liquid, and the Lord began to groan furiously. Sophia tearfully said that it hurt, but the doctor replied that everything was fine. That's how it should be. Then the assistant asked what kind of medicine it was, and whether it was anything strange. Our heroine announced that it was nothing special. It was premium holy water from the church. Sophia and the assistant asked in surprise if Miss Enya really had one like that. In their eyes, she could see where she had gotten such a priceless thing. I thought to myself that, just in case, I stole a couple from the house when I ran away. Having learned what they were giving, both the granddaughter and the servant began to persuade the milord to drink every last drop. Once he calmed down, Enya said she would continue regular treatment until he recovered. Sophia was immensely grateful, so she said she didn't even know how to repay. The assistant thought he had heard that holy water was used for incurable diseases. Was the Lord's condition really that bad? And Adeline suggested treating it with herbs. He thanked Enya and added that he would like to repay, but he doesn't know what they can do. But our heroine knew perfectly well what she wanted for her work. She needed land. She explained that she would like to grow herbs herself, so that she could help people. The servant replied that there was little useful land in Greenwald, and that what they could offer was uncultivated. The answer was that she needed a large plot of land, and she would take care of the rest herself. And then she was offered the garden behind the estate, along with a small vegetable garden nearby. It is true that the wasteland in front of the castle is much larger, but it belongs to the Kidlins. She wanted to get the nearby one. Instead of the vacant lot that Dale found, it suited her. Imperial orders are always delivered to the estate first, and that way she will know all the news. The assistant asked me to wait while he prepared a contract for the position of doctor. Our heroine was pleased with her approach to this task, but not Lady Adeline. Miss Kidland was unhappy with everything about Enya, and now she would be in the way. When she returned home, the first thing she did was tell Dale that she had found a job. She explained that she had received a job at the Lord's estate, but her husband looked puzzled. Then Enya explained in detail that she would be monitoring the Lord's health for some time. Dale asked her if she needed the money, and if she would put too much pressure on herself. Enya replied that this could be called preparation for receiving the land he had found. She also thinks that someone deliberately poisoned the Lord, and she, as a doctor, cannot ignore this. She added that working on the estate would help her be the first to learn news from the Empire. Dale said that the Emperor might also be interested in her if rumors spread. People will be interested in the doctor who healed the cursed Lord after 3 months. And the Emperor is interested in talents regardless of origin and will definitely notice her. He concluded by saying that she was, after all, a skilled doctor and made her proud of herself. However, she said that she was touched by his concern for her, but asked him not to worry. Having explained that she had her own ways, he then could not resist asking what she was talking about. She explained that she was able to remain in the shadows for so long, not because she hid her identity. In a conspiratorial tone, she informed him that the Emperor had too much work. She tirelessly reported to the capital about the crimes of people from the old aristocracy. They have been ruling the country for many years, so it will not be easy to dig up everything. But to do this, she hired informants to uncover crimes and corruption. She added cheerfully that an emperor who is strengthening his power should be happy. And because of her, he is too busy to come for her, and this is only to her advantage. Just perfect. I thought to myself that this is how he ties the Emperor's hands and punishes the villains from the original. It began to dawn on Dale, and he very quietly, almost muttered, "That's it." She didn't hear. Then he said that he was surprised and would never have thought of such a method. Now he understood why he had so much work lately. It was her plan. Enya did not forget about her patient and asked him how he was feeling. Sophia replied that thanks to the medicine, her grandfather was back on his feet in just a week. Enya knew that the poison that had been used to poison the Lord was rare and had unique properties. It requires repeated administration, and there are no side effects until a lethal dose is reached. Hexagon, the former head of the old aristocracy faction, was behind the poisoning of her grandfather. It was part of his plan to destroy her family, the leader of the new aristocracy faction. History may have repeated itself, but who among the Hexagon's people could have been in the estate? It was a question she didn't have an answer to yet, and suddenly she saw someone. She only managed to see red curls and thought that it could be Adelina. And again, the question arose as to where the lady was rushing to in such a hurry, but Enya did not have time to think about the reason. Sophia caught up with her, and she asked her if something had happened, as the examination was over. The young lady replied that she wanted to thank them, because they would never have known about the poison. They might have looked in the wrong direction and ended up losing their grandfather. Enya clarified that she had previously been told that the Lord brewed the cozy herb as tea. Sophia explained that the flower was Greenwald's trademark, but then suddenly disappeared. Then Adelaine started bringing it. Enya was surprised, because she uses it for treatment. And I thought that apparently the grass that was brought from Kidland was not a cozy flower. The conclusion was obvious, and she asked Sophia to keep an eye on Adeline. Miss Greenwald replied that it was impossible, because grandfather loved the lady so much. And for her, she is like a real sister. They grew up together, and she cannot suspect her. Then she continued, embarrassed, that she had not meant to disregard the advice at all. And it may sound pathetic, but it's hard to be rational and cold at the same time. Our heroine could have simply ignored it, but she didn't want to abandon this sweet girl. That's why she said that not only Adeline can be a friend, she can be considered one too. After a moment of silence, Sophia became happy and asked her new friend to call her by her first name. They agreed to throw away conventions and call each other without regard to status. The young lady was so happy that she offered to show Enya her favorite place. This place was a library, and our heroine agreed to go there sometime. Her thoughts returned to her concerns. Now she would visit the estate often, and it would be nice to have someone close in the castle. But I was distracted by some noise. It looked more like a quarrel, and judging by the raised tone, a serious quarrel. It was unusual, so I decided to satisfy my curiosity and followed the sound. Adelia screamed that she came here because her father said so, but what a mess this was. Some girl cured the Lord, and now if their family is exposed, it will be the end for them. Our heroine recognized the voice of Lady Kidland. She was holding a communicator in her hands. A voice came from him, asking him to calm down and explain everything again. She repeated that the Count had been cured by some girl, who also stole Dale from her. The voice on the communicator asked if she had seen the documents she had been asked to find. She replied, "Does it really matter now? Because if nothing works out, then it's all over. And if Duke Hexagon finds out, then they will all die." After these words, Enya thought. The voice continued that if she found the documents, then they would have nothing to worry about. She angrily replied how she could find what the dead man had hidden and threw the device. Adeline shouted into the void that she was fed up with everything and that she wouldn't do anything anymore. Then she laughed and added that if the documents were so necessary, he should have come himself. Our heroine was afraid to look out from around the corner. She didn't need to be noticed at all. All she could do was listen to Adeline, who had gone from screaming to whispering. Lady Kidland blamed her for everything, because with her appearance in Greenwald, everything went to hell. Enya thought that Adeline was talking about the Duke, and Duke Hexagon came to mind. After all, there were only 2 duchies in the Empire at the moment, Hexagon and her Lockhart family. After waiting for Adeline to leave, our heroine went downstairs to check everything. She found the most important thing. It was the Mana Stone. Now she will have proof. As Enya thought, Duke Hexagon, the faction leader and the villain from the original, is behind everything. This family specializes in medicine, and there was a time when they were called the People's Angel. The main reason is that they provided the entire empire with the so-called panacea. The medicine was miraculous and cheap, and for the poor, it became a salvation. But it was a terrible drug, with serious reactions such as paralysis and addiction. The previous emperor, supported by Hexagon, turned a blind eye to this, but the current emperor actively sought to bring the duke to justice. In the end, Hexagon was placed under house arrest, which was the most they could do at the time. As his prison term expires, he will likely try to regain power, and the fact that her grandfather and the lord were poisoned by the same poison could not be a coincidence. Enya could not allow pharmacology to be used for nefarious purposes, and apparently those documents are irrefutable evidence of fraud. She understood that she needed to find them before Adeline did, and she was frightened by the surprise. She was frightened by Sophia, who came from the sounds coming from the stairs, which are not usually used. She said that she had taken a wrong turn and, in her great excitement, had dropped something. Enya wasn't sure how it would end and decided not to tell Sophia anything. However, this was her chance, so she said that she had some free time. And she asked if Miss wouldn't mind showing her the library today, and she was delighted. Our heroine thought to herself that since things had turned out this way, she would look there first. The young lady barely audibly said that it seemed like she hadn't been here for a long time either, and Enya thought that there were so many books that it would be difficult to find the documents on her own. Sophia said that before Greenwald began to decline, there were even more books that people in her family loved to read. Even though the place now looks more like an abandoned warehouse, Enya realized why there was so much dust here and asked if Miss had brought Adeline here. Having replied that she had brought her, she added that she didn't like it there because it was dirty. But our heroine thought that this was one of the best places to hide documents, and if Lady Kidland had taken the search seriously, she would have started looking here. She assumed that this was a place where it would be difficult for an outsider to find them. At that moment, she became interested in the fabric that, judging by its outline, covered the painting. Sophia explained that this portrait was unfinished, which is why it was left in the library. From the words of the young lady, Enya learned that this was written by the previous head of the Greenwald family. In appearance, it was a completely ordinary portrait. She didn't find anything special in it. The texture is a bit strange to the touch. But that's all? But that's only at first glance. Something could be felt beneath the layers of canvas. And, calming her trembling, she realized what she had found. Returning home, our heroine wondered how it had happened that it was already so late. And when it got so dark, Dale was probably already worried and needed to hurry. She spent a lot of time trying to avoid Sophia's attention and get the documents. Her thoughts returned to Dale, the last time he had come down the hill to meet her. It was awkward, but very sweet. And now there was silence. Suddenly she heard a quiet rustling. Then it became quiet again, and she thought that it could have been some kind of animal. Since the house stood apart from the village, it became creepy when it got dark. Our heroine quickened her pace. She didn't want to meet any wild animals, and yet she felt that something was happening behind her. Then there was a flash. Her heart sank, and Enya, beside herself, turned around and asked in fear who was there. The moon was shining brightly that evening, so in its light she could see Dale clearly. But what is he doing here? She thought. But the next second she ran towards him. He fell on his back. She was terribly scared for him. What had happened again? He was wounded. After quickly feeling him, Enya realized that there were no physical wounds on him, but he was burning. Even more frightened, she asked him not to leave her, and then noticed the scroll. You didn't need any special knowledge to not guess that it was for teleportation. But what's interesting is that it turns out Dale used it, so what the hell is going on? Our heroine decided to put this question off until later. First, she needed to get home. Luckily, the neighbors helped her drag him, and after a while, he came to his senses. Hearing her ask how he was feeling, Dale jumped up and asked what she was doing there. Then he asked why she was in his room, and slightly embarrassed, she apologized. When he asked how he ended up there, she told him what had happened, but that wasn't important. So she started talking about how it wasn't just for nothing that he lost consciousness. Seriously, but at the same time affectionately, she asked if he had been overtired lately. She explained her thought, because this was the second time in a short period of time that he had lost consciousness. She added that she wasn't asking her to tell her everything, but if she could help, then let her say so. After thanking her, he said that he simply had to concentrate on work and to do everything for a happy married life, but apparently a little overdone. After listening to him, I asked why he ended up using the teleportation scroll. There was no point in denying it, so he said he finished later and decided to use it once. Enya said that the scrolls are very convenient, but that using them too often puts a strain on the body. And in general, it's normal to be late, and I asked not to use them anymore. Left alone, Dale thought he couldn't believe he'd passed out in front of her. He needed to go to the Imperial Palace secretly, but ended up making her worry. Probably, accumulated fatigue and frequent use of scrolls did their job. Hearing the door creak on the second floor, I thought I needed to find another way, and Enya thought that if it were a disease, she would have smelled it right away. It was clearly a side effect, but they are rare after a single use. For a mercenary like him, using scrolls so often that it harms his body is not normal. I remembered the necklace, which was too valuable to end up in the hands of a commoner. He also said that he no longer takes on dangerous work. So is he hiding something? And although she went to bed with a heavy heart that evening, in the morning, she made her decision cheerfully. When he saw Enya, he couldn't believe his eyes, and she asked him to sit down. Bustling around the kitchen, she said she had prepared dishes that were good for restoring strength. He said sheepishly that she, too, was tired of working as a doctor and caring for herbs. She replied that he used to cook for her, and now she would take care of him, too. As she studied the documents, he said he had never seen these before. This was the very first contract signed between the Greenwald and Kidland ancestors. And after studying it, she can say that Duke Gegsagen and Kidland are in cahoots. She explained that she was curious as to why Lady Adeline had stopped in Baron Greenwald. From an overheard conversation, I learned that everything was done to destroy this evidence against them. Due to the terrain, Greenwald was often attacked by monsters. But the Lord had mines, and he signed a temporary contract with Kidland to destroy monsters. In exchange, Greenwald granted the right to extract minerals from the mountains. Currently, mining in the border areas is Kidland's main source of income. It was also profitable at that time. But did this really make Kidland more greedy? Then the Count, one of the parties to the contract, died, and no one knew where the documents were. And instead of helping his neighbors, Kidland came up with a plan to swallow up the land entirely. Dale, after examining the two maps, noted that the land boundaries of the territories differed greatly, and if such a large land deal had actually been concluded, it would not have been forgotten. Dale asked if it meant that the current contract was fabricated and that Gegsagen was involved in it. She replied that Kidland, with the help of Duke Hexagon, hid the real contract, and based on the fake, they seized the territory of Greenwald for a long time. Now they had in their hands the real contract and the map, proving Kidland's guilt. And in the communicator recording, there is Adeline's voice, where she clearly says, Duke Hexagon. It's all written on the Mana Stone, but Lady Kidland apparently doesn't even know about it. If everything is reported to the Imperial Palace, Greenwald's position will improve. Enya had other evidence, but she wanted to show it to the Lord and his granddaughter. When Dale asked if the Emperor would decide this issue fairly, she answered that, of course. And in general, he did an excellent job with all the tasks that she sent him before. And if it weren't for the marriage issue, they could well have become good colleagues. She would also like to make a wish that this issue would be resolved as soon as possible. Looking at her mysteriously, Dale said that this issue would definitely be resolved soon. As Dale said, a month later, everything was already over, and changes began to happen in the estate. The imperial family showed strictness and conducted a thorough investigation. Enya's diagnosis was confirmed. The poison was made from a modified flower. Because the Kidlands could not openly use the land, they slowly poisoned it. Outwardly, they maintained the appearance of family ties, but in reality, they were only waiting for the death of the Lord. Then the Kidlands would have swallowed up their neighbors, and Adeline would have had to flee the estate in a hurry. The return of land and payment of compensation were made immediately. This was logical, and in the end, Greenwald was able to quickly recover, and the people in it began to live happily. Our heroine came to the estate to visit my lord and see Sophia. The lord's assistant thanked our heroine once again and offered to take her to the Count. Young Lady Greenwald was over the moon to see her new friend. In the manner typical of youth, she could not hide her joyful emotions. Enya asked if the girl had come all this way to meet them. Sophia chattered that she and her grandfather had been looking forward to seeing them and invited the guests into the office. My lord read the letter, and Sophia said that he cried every time he reread it. He looked up at those who entered and said that he had read it for the last time before showing it to her. His hands were shaking a little as he folded the paper back into the envelope. He was nervous. Sophia asked if this letter was in the documents, and my lord answered in the affirmative. Then he told me that his great-grandfather had left this message to his grandfather a long time ago. When she asked him if he was close to his grandfather, he replied that he personally taught him everything. With sadness in his eyes, he said that his grandfather missed his father very much until his last breath. And now he is glad that the letter survived, and he was able to read it instead of him. His grandfather once told him that when he was young, the South often suffered from torrential rains. Perhaps fearing that something bad might happen to him, he left this letter. Kidland knew he had left a letter full of concern and advice for his young son. My lord said that he sometimes noticed something suspicious, but turned a blind eye to it, because they were useful relatives and there was no hard evidence. And just thinking about what they could have done to his granddaughter makes his heart hurt. Then he thanked Enya, because she revealed the truth before anything could happen. Sighing, he went on to say that he had been thinking for a very long time about how he could repay her. Our heroine replied that it was not worth it, because all the main work had been done by the palace. One of the participants in the conspiracy had come to the lord's estate in the past with a proposal. He wanted to buy part of the Greenwald lands, but the lord was not going to sell anything. The next way they came up with was to use Kidland as a relative, to seize both the lands and the mines, and most importantly, to bury all the secrets forever. That was the deal. The man helped Kidland capture Greenwald, and in return received part of the land. Since Hexagon was involved, the imperial family acted decisively. Sophia said that since the report was submitted by the Greenwalds, no one knows about Enya's involvement. But our heroine understood that it would be strange if people found out about her involvement. It would be better for her to stay out of the spotlight altogether. It's enough that they know the truth. However, my lord asked Miss Enya not to refuse the reward, and Sophia supported him. She was about to answer, but Dale said first that he had something to say about it. Having spread out the map, he continued that Greenwald had been given back the lands that had been captured, and pointing to the wasteland, he added that he believed that she had also already returned from Kidland. He offered to give Enya the wasteland and the restored forest, believing that this would be enough. Dale reminded her that she had saved them all after all, but Enya thought a little differently. She was, of course, pleased that he remembered what she had said earlier and raised the topic. She had planned to get this land, but under the circumstances, she decided to give up. The grandfather and granddaughter agreed to this proposal, considering it an excellent idea. Dale said that he asked them to express their gratitude and simply accept these lands. Then she said that since it would be rude to refuse, she would accept it with gratitude, but only restored forest. Otherwise, the whole point of returning these lands is lost. Instead, she suggested working together to turn the wasteland into fertile land. Enya said she wanted to offer them her help to show that Greenwald had risen. She said that she had been studying cleansing methods, and with the help of the temple, everything could be done quickly. The owner of the house was surprised that the busy priests would make the entire journey to the estate. She replied that with the help of donations, a priest she knew would definitely agree. He is someone who loves money very much, and if the amount is sufficient, he can even come here. My lord asked if he had done everything correctly, and the assistant replied that he had. But it's hard for him to believe. Since His Majesty is in Greenwald, it means Lady Enya is the one. Clearing his throat for effect, the gentleman said that it would be better not to raise this topic. Then he quietly added that they looked happy, and that was all that mattered. Stretching in her chair, she thought that this was enough to clear the wasteland. Our heroine was pleased with the work done and decided to check on Dale. Even when he was doing such routine and rough work, she couldn't take her eyes off him. Sometimes she even thought how handsome and stately he was, and how lucky his wife would be. I was glad to see that Dale has been looking much healthier lately than before. She called out his name and asked if he was okay. He replied that he was fine. I hoped he stopped using teleportation scrolls after that day. She felt like she had gotten a lot from Dale since she came here. Enya said that they had been through a lot together and suggested going somewhere. Unexpectedly for herself, she invited him on a date, and they went to a small town. They were walking along the streets where children were playing, and one of them let his guard down. The girl almost fell, but Dale supported her and advised her to be more careful in the future. The kids ran on. The girl waved her hand at him and called him Mr. Enya explained that in the eyes of children, every adult looks like Mr. or Ma'am. Then she added that seeing children running around the street excitedly lifts their spirits. And she complained that in Greenwald there are almost no children, that in a big city it is different. Dale said that as far as their date goes, there's a reason they came here. She answered evasively that the bigger the city, the more you can see. She also said that it was terrible, because if you think about it, they spent so little time alone, and she suggested making this day special, because after all, it was their first date. She also wanted to thank him for his help, so she suggested going to the store. At some point, completely embarrassed, he asked why he needed so many clothes. There is no need for this, and it is quite enough for him that they spend the day together. He explained that he would be embarrassed if she spent such a large sum on him. She replied when she would ever get the chance to dress him in such cute clothes. Enya thought that Dale looked good in everything, and that buying him clothes was a pleasure. And this boutique is for middle-class people, so the prices won't hit your wallet too hard. She said out loud that she had signed a contract and had the money, so he didn't have to worry. She helped Rosanna invest in Grindelwald, who became a partner in herbalism. So at the moment, our heroine really didn't need money. The suits she bought for Dale turned out to be a pair, so she dressed up too. After a successful shopping spree, Enya thought it would be nice to have a little snack. So she said that she had heard that there were decent tea houses in this city and suggested that we go in. Smiling, Dale replied that he would agree to anything she suggested, as long as they were together. Unable to resist, she replied that he always expressed his thoughts so pompously. They hadn't known each other for very long, but her spirits were lifted when he was around. She even sometimes thought that it seemed to her that they had known each other for much longer. The day was so beautiful that she completely forgot about all her fears. She simply enjoyed every moment of this wonderful first date. And even if it is a contract marriage, to avoid marrying the Emperor. Every minute spent with Dale made her feel light and happy. He was also in high spirits and wanted to do something nice for her. When he saw her happy face, his soul became much warmer. She allowed herself to relax that day and just have fun with a handsome man. When she asked him if he liked it, he replied that he felt like it was a wonderful dream. Enya said that, thank God, she was very happy, which meant that her efforts had paid off in full. Dale said that she must have worked so hard, all for today. Looking at her mysteriously, he said that he actually had something for her too. He took out the wedding rings. Enya said that it was strange, because they had a fictitious marriage. Dale then explained that he thought it would be easier to avoid unnecessary suspicions. Therefore, it is better if they wear them, and asked if he could put a ring on her finger. Our heroine blushed. It looked too much like a real proposal. She had a very strange feeling, but still she will remember this day for a long time. She had enjoyed the day so much that she was a little sad that it was time to go back. Our heroine's attention was drawn to a stand with an advertisement from a fortune teller. She read that they do everything from drawing up horoscopes to calculating compatibility. When he repeated the last words, his eyes shone so brightly that she was even surprised. Thinking that he might like this, I suggested that he come in. It could be funny. They entered, and the fortune teller said, "Oh, dear guests, what exactly brought them here today?" Dale said that compatibility. They came to find out about their married life. Enya didn't trust these fortune tellers, so she wasn't surprised when they were announced as newlyweds. She could have guessed it herself by looking at the wedding rings and matching clothes. However, after taking a quick glance at Dale, she was stunned. He clearly expected to hear something wonderful. Meanwhile, the fortune teller asked, "You don't actually have a real marriage?" Thinking about how he could find out, I couldn't help but ask what he was talking about. The fortune teller, without answering, said that it seemed that their past had been intertwined for a long time. But a terrible fate brought them together again, at which point Dale demanded it stop. He jumped up from his seat abruptly. This uncharacteristic reaction frightened Enya. Dale said that he thought it was a normal fortune teller, but a camouflage potion was used. The fortune teller objected, as they could threaten another person without any reason. Enya could see that Dale was beside himself with anger, and the situation could get out of control. She asked him to calm down, as this could only make the situation worse. Her words brought him to his senses, and seeing her excitement, he apologized for frightening her. Feeling support in her face, the fortune teller intervened and said that her husband had gone mad. Miss heard the explanation that he could not think clearly, and the man seemed suspicious. Glad that he had calmed down, she said that she understood everything, but they needed to talk calmly. She turned her attention to the fortune teller and said that it was now his turn to answer. I asked him why he used a camouflage potion to hide his identity. In response, I heard that he simply wanted to create a mystical atmosphere, nothing more. She said the Magic Tower certified one is too expensive for the atmosphere, but other potions are prohibited by law and are almost impossible to obtain. Disguise potion is sometimes used for crimes and is therefore strictly controlled. It's incredibly expensive, and much of it is produced illegally, but it's not as effective. Dale said that if the fortune teller continued to deny it, he would hand him over to the authorities. The man replied that he really didn't know when the effect would end, but he didn't do anything wrong. He is not a fortune teller, and his power is weak. He was actually once a monk in the main temple, and that he does not predict fate. He simply receives divine revelations. Enya said that the temple was unlikely to be against it, so why move so far? He replied that at first, it was a simple hobby to add variety to the boring life in the temple. And although the revelations were not always accurate, they still attracted people who believed. Especially the young sons and daughters of aristocrats were looking to him for answers. He hesitated and repeated that the power was weak and the revelations were not precise. She finished it for him, and that's why he was expelled from the temple, so that he wouldn't deceive the aristocrats. Dale wondered if what he said about their past was also a fabrication. He replied that no. This time he saw two children who looked exactly like them. Enya said it wasn't a revelation because they had never met before. The fortune teller asked that since he told the whole truth, they would not report him to the authorities. Dale replied that the use of holy power by someone excommunicated from the temple was a serious crime. He began to plead that he had no other choice, and Enya supported him. She suggested reporting only the possession of prohibited substances and leaving out the rest. The fortune teller was delighted, but Dale said that everything would depend on what he said. After asking Enya to wait, he asked the fortune teller to come out with him and talk privately. On the street, I asked them to tell only the truth, whether there was anything in the vision other than children. The man asked. So that's what interests him. He's still bothered by his past bad fate. He advised not to be afraid of the past, but rather to strive for the future you desire. In this case, everything will work out, and a happy future together will await you. Apart from what the fortune teller had already said, Dale didn't notice anything suspicious. As he entered, our hero was still pondering the vision and the words of the sorrowful prophet. His concern did not escape Enya's attention, and she asked if everything was okay. Her smile and gentle touch made him forget his sad thoughts. Having said that everything was fine, he suggested that they go back home, as it was already quite late. Already at home, Dale was negotiating. He asked to watch the fortune teller some more. He then added that any interaction with the Hexagon House should be especially monitored. The question followed, and that His Majesty actually intends to continue living like this, and he had already been told more than once that this had a negative impact on his body and health. After finishing the conversation, our hero thought that this was true, and his body seemed to be falling apart. The thought flashed through his mind that he could stop now, and he closed his eyes. I remembered the words that he was a bastard, and this after everything that had been done to save him, and also that they ordered not to give him a drop of water until such an order was given. These were terrible memories. Even now he felt that trembling that had been there. He felt the cold and dampness, and the approaching hunger with his whole body. Dale didn't even know in those days whether he would ever be able to leave that place or whether he would be stuck there. When the Empire celebrated, he felt especially lonely, and despair tore at his soul. Then he saw her. She found him even here, and asked why he climbed so high. She asked him to come down. She was able to help during that very dark period of his life. She was the only one who said that he could leave that dark place behind. Therefore, he must protect Enya's happiness, even if he has to destroy himself. Our heroine's mood was spoiled. She came across these tracks again. For the past few weeks, some asshole has been stealing herbs from her garden. At first, she thought they were animals and put up a fence, but it didn't help. The thief became more brazen. At first, he stole only leaves, but now he was tearing out the grass by the roots. The tracks were bigger than hers and smaller than Dale's, and they were not Sophia's tracks. She could not accept the fact that some strange thief had appeared in her garden. She was distracted from these thoughts by Sophia, who came that day to help her. The girl was happy to help her friend and offered to give it her all. Then, hesitating, she asked if Enya could spare some time for her later. She needs to talk about something, although this may not be the best time to talk. She looked tense, so Enya smiled and replied that she would be happy to. Pouring tea into cups, Sophia said that she asked everyone to listen and not to be afraid. Then she blurted out that the truth was that she knew who Enya really was. Our heroine choked on her tea from the unexpected and straightforward statement. Taking the offered napkin, she wondered how it could have happened that Sophia had found out everything. But first, I decided to ask leading questions to clarify what exactly the girl knew. Sophia said she suspected from the very beginning that Miss Enya was not an ordinary girl. She continued that, despite being a commoner, she was never afraid of Lady Adeline. She also heard that the Miss was the real owner of such a masterpiece as the angel horn. Roseanne also said that she entered into an alliance with Greenwald because she trusted Enya, and the grandfather and his assistant treat her with caution, as if they knew who she was. She continued that she spends time with her, as with a friend, and therefore could not help but notice. It's all about the grace that she sees in every movement, like an invisible thread. This is noticeable in everything, the grace with which he drinks tea and the calm with which he walks. It was this elegance that made me think that this was a perfect example from an etiquette book. After a short pause, Sophia continued to say that it was then that she realized. I realized that Miss Enya was hiding her true identity because she was an aristocrat, and he dares to suggest that she did it to escape because of her love for Dale. She said that she was a big fan of romance, and immediately understood that this was a love story. Enya recalled that while she was looking for documents, Sophia enthusiastically retold the novel, but she felt better, because she was afraid that the girl found out that she was from the Lockhart family. So she decided to tell a half-truth, that she really was from an aristocratic family, but they were falsely accused and fell into disgrace, and Dale, as a mercenary, helped her escape. And if His Majesty receives news that she has survived, then this will be the end for her. Then she asked him to put himself in her shoes, and if possible, keep it between them. Sophia apologized for speaking about it so frivolously and promised to keep the secret. She sympathetically said that Enya had to endure so much, and if necessary, she would help. Our heroine thanked him, although she felt bad that she had to lie to her friend. The girl continued that there was another reason why she noticed. The fact is that Greenwald's position improved and invitations began to arrive. She has little understanding of etiquette, but she saw in it the elegance she had dreamed of. Sophia ended her speech by asking Miss Enya to teach her some manners. Our heroine happily agreed, because the girl promised to keep her secret. So Enya began to teach lessons that her young student found very difficult. Falling onto the bed, Sophia muttered that she couldn't take it anymore and might die. She said that she would never have thought in her life that learning etiquette could be so difficult. Having said that they would continue tomorrow, she suggested that the girl have a good rest. Already in the corridor, she thought that Sophia had found out her secret, that she didn't even suspect that she looked like an aristocrat, and that she needed to be more careful. Dale said he would come get her, but she felt like she still had a little time. Our heroine thought that since this had already happened, she would have time to go and check the garden. However, the sun was setting faster than she expected, and it was already noticeably dark. I thought that maybe I should have waited for Dale when I heard some rustling, and although she was a little afraid, she still went into the garden and saw a stranger there. There really was a man in the field, and he was clearly picking her herbs. Could it really be a thief? She didn't know what to do. The first thing that came to mind was to call for help. But then another thought came to mind. She might scare him away, and then she would never find him. Realizing that she didn't have many options, she decided to act decisively. She screamed at him. How dare he stretch out his dirty paws to her precious herbs? Having hit it with a shovel, she thought that these were her seeds. She had gotten them with such difficulty. She continued out loud. So this means that he has been causing trouble on her territory all this time. Without turning around, he grunted that it was impossible to hit a person with a shovel for no apparent reason. And then he asked if her teacher hadn't told her to be careful with suspicious people. A second later, our heroine began to choke on the smoke and instinctively covered herself with her hand. All this commotion attracted the attention of our hero, and he rushed in that direction. The stranger began to come to his senses and, not understanding anything, began to look around. His eyes were still watering, but he was still able to make out the strangers, a man and a woman. Realizing that he was tied up, he started screaming, asking how they dared to kidnap him. Were they crazy or something? Enya retorted that it was the thief who passed out who said it, so they dragged him here. Continuing to be indignant, the thief said that this was all because he was hit on the head, and they tied him up thanks to their coordinated actions, even though the thief used smoke. Our heroine quickly overcame the unpleasant sensations and grabbed the cloak. She was able to smell his illness, so the smoke was no obstacle to her grabbing him. At that moment, Dale arrived in time, rushing to help his wife. Having learned that she was not injured, I heard her explain that she saw a thief in the field. Meanwhile, the thief started lamenting that he hadn't eaten anything for so many days, and he even got hit on the head. The stranger asked how she was able to find him in the smokescreen, but she did not answer. Our hero interrogated him about why a person with an artifact would steal herbs from someone else's garden. Enya knew that the artifact was not something that everyone could afford, but she didn't know why he was targeting her field, so she decided to get information from him. Pointing to dinner, she told him that if he told the truth, she would share it with him. He wasn't going to give in, so she revealed that she had used herbs in her preparation. The very same herbs that he picked and ate are now cooked and have not lost their properties. The thief couldn't resist, and when he was full, he thanked her and noted that everything was delicious. Miss returned to the question of where the man got the artifact, because it is not a simple thing. He replied that he made it himself because he was an ivory tower alchemist. She asked in surprise why the man from the tower would steal herbs from someone else's field. The answer was that in fact, he had been expelled from there long ago and had lived on the street for a long time. The ivory tower was created by aristocrats, and everything revolves around their interests. If he had focused on making weapons or cosmetics, he might not have been kicked out. But instead, he wanted to create things that would help many people in life. For example, increasing the yield of wheat or barley for tenant farmers, or a device that will make life easier in summer and winter for those living in slums. When he left the tower, he was full of hope, but outside it, he was nobody. He doesn't know how to do anything except research, so he couldn't even get a job. One day, he heard about the herb garden and how it improved the Lord's health. In the end, he said that he shouldn't have done that, and he was very sorry that it happened. He was desperate and hadn't eaten anything for a long time, so his head was simply all over the place. His story touched our heroine, but she couldn't just take his word for it. Then she asked his name, and then said that she could introduce him to Lord Greenwald. She decided to leave the decision to the Lord. An experienced alchemist could come in handy. She told Edward that the Lord would be able to determine the value of his work. He knows how to appreciate, adding that he himself would have to prove his worth. He was glad of the chance. Our heroine continued that, although he was a thief who stole herbs from the garden, but she still wants to give him this chance because she truly believes in his dreams. So, the new hero of our story received the opportunity to become a useful person. And Dale thought that Enya had never learned to ignore those who needed help. Our heroine thanked Sophia for her help with Edward, who was already working at the estate. The girl replied that the alchemist was a rare and valuable acquisition, and her grandfather was delighted. Then she said that she felt like she was constantly relying on her friend's opinion in everything. Take, for example, this gift that she will present to the Countess today. Enya replied that it was Sophia who found out that the Countess liked her and told her. She only recommended tea, which is good for weather-sensitive people. Driving away from the castle, Sophia once again remembered Enya's words, that this was her gratitude. At parting, Miss wished her a good time at Countess Clemente's estate. Guests had already gathered around the hostess of the house, telling her about their achievements. The Countess wondered if the wealth and power of the Clemente family were really so desirable. She lost her children and husband, and in order not to be alone, she organizes these receptions. But she was still lonely, even though she had used these people herself, so she deserved it. It seemed to her that it was too late to hope that anyone would sincerely care for her. Only if this young Lady Greenwald, she never flatters, but at the same time is polite. She liked this girl and asked what the young lady was holding in her hands. Sophia was embarrassed, so the Countess asked the butler to escort the guests to their seats. The guest said that she was always invited, and she could not come empty-handed. The weather was getting colder, and Sophia noticed that the Countess looked tired. So for the cold months, I prepared an herbal tea that restores energy. Milady thought she was good at controlling her face in the presence of others. But this young lady was able to notice and asked if it was from a friend that Sophia was helping in the garden. The girl replied that when Enya heard the Countess's story, she prepared tea. Sophia added that her friend said that this would help warm not only the body, but also the heart. The Countess was touched by this gift, made without flattery or any ambition, but simply a person who sincerely thought about her. How long had it been since she had received something like this? She said that she thought the young lady had said that her friend's name was Enya, and she asked me to thank her and tell her that she would never forget this. Roseanne tried to persuade our heroine. She said that this was a chance to make a fortune. Then she asked if she had any idea how many aristocrats asked about her tea. Enya responded that if demand is met, the effectiveness of the tea may decrease. The guest said they were missing out on an opportunity, but still couldn't sacrifice premium quality. The tea that Sophia gave to Countess Clemente naturally aroused interest among the nobility. Rosanna and Enya have now launched a premium herbal tea project. This project was aimed at improving public health. And to keep up with the growing attention, Rosanna suggested taking advantage of the opportunity. And for this, it was necessary to go to the capital. Our heroine was surprised why there. The guest explained that this is where the main branch of her father's trade guild is located. And since the project is aimed at a noble goal, it offers a great opportunity. Enya understood that it would be easier for her to achieve her goal in the capital, but there were also difficulties there. Therefore, she replied that she appreciated the offer, but was not planning to go to the capital yet. A little disappointed, Rosanna asked to be informed if his opinion changed. Having said that, apparently, the meeting was over for today, and the main trade issues had been resolved. And before leaving, she joked that if she stayed late, Dale might not like it. Having decided to work a little more, I thought that a lot had happened recently. Helping the Lord with his treatment and teaching Sophia etiquette, she firmly established herself in Greenwald. The cultivation of the land continues, but with the advent of the alchemist, significant progress has been made. The premium herbal business was designed for the poor who cannot afford to buy herbs. And this in an empire where everyone believes that the emperor is a virtuous ruler. But only our heroine knew what awaited them in the future and wanted to change history. She won't let you treat her like a toy like she did in the original. He will not allow the emperor to lock the empress in prison for his own selfishness. But being on the run, she couldn't really do much, especially now that Duke Hexagon will soon be released from house arrest. There was a knock at the door, and she thought she wasn't expecting any guests, but she went to check. A pleasant baritone voice from behind the door asked if a man named Dale lived here. Enya thought that in the wilderness, strangers were rare, and this voice was unfamiliar to her. She decided to check and see if she could use the protective artifact that Dale gave her. Opening the door, she saw an incredibly handsome man and froze in surprise. The guest asked that she was apparently his wife, and that he did not expect her to be such a beauty. When she asked if he knew her husband, the man replied that they were inseparable friends. Enya said incredulously that Dale hadn't mentioned that he had a friend coming to visit. She asked again if he really was a friend. Then the guest said that Dale doesn't really talk about business. He added why she shouldn't talk to him, so he could share his memories of Dale. But could she believe his words? Because if you think about it, Dale keeps a lot to himself. Enya thought that his secrecy sometimes made her very interested in him, but she still wanted Dale to share his story with her one day. She saw this man for the first time, and how could she know that he was trustworthy? Looking closely at the guest, she realized that, judging by his clothes and tone, he was an aristocrat. Enya asked about the high-level protective scroll he was holding in his hand. He chuckled and said that since she knew, it made the task much easier. But if she is afraid that he might harm her, she can take the scroll and simply tear it apart, and he will protect her, or he can use the magic toy that is in his pocket. She didn't know how he found out, but in any case, she couldn't let her guard down. The guest continued to say that he wouldn't do anything anyway, so there was no need to worry. He offered to come in and talk, and without knowing how it happened, she let him in. As a hostess, she made tea and asked him what brought him when Dale was not home. He started praising the cookies with all his might, and Enya asked him not to dodge the question. After explaining that Dale had prepared the dessert, he said in surprise that it was the one who couldn't cook. When she asked if he knew her husband for sure, he said that the guy had no reason to cook. Unable to resist, Enya replied that she had a feeling he didn't know Dale at all. The visitor, grinning, said that they still didn't believe him, but they could swear that he was a friend. For example, he knows that he is a hunter, and deep down he is cold and indifferent to everything. Enya countered that it was not true. Dale was kind to everyone, and everyone in the village loved him very much. He asked if this was the same Dale, and added that it sounded like he was pretending in front of his wife. Having replied that she was not going to joke, our heroine asked who he was, and the fact that he gave her a scroll of protection in no way confirms his identity. If he doesn't tell me who he really is, it won't end with a simple goodbye. He chuckled and asked, "It seems they are disturbing the order, and she wants to know his name. Shouldn't you first introduce yourself, Lady Enya Lockhart, the Duke's daughter?" Hearing her real name from a person she saw for the first time, she became scared. But over the years spent on the run, she learned to react quickly to different situations. She felt from the very beginning that something was wrong, and her intuition did not fail her. When she asked who he was, the guest replied that he was Cassian Schultz and was pleased to meet him. In the original, he was the Emperor's only friend from a prestigious family of magicians. He even secretly tried to help the Empress, but due to the dark romance genre, he died unexpectedly. The Marquise's family never learned the cause of death, and in the novel, this remains a mystery. She couldn't understand how an aristocrat like him could be acquainted with an ordinary mercenary. Cassian asked what that stunning artifact was that she used. Dale gave it to her, and he explained that he was the one who made it. But Dale didn't introduce him to the person he gave it to. So I came to see him in person, but I didn't expect it to be the missing Lady Lockhart. Then he asked if the Emperor knew, and she thought that she needed to do something. But the guest said he was joking and would not tell the Emperor anything so he could relax. Enya thought that he was acting this way because he thought that she was dependent on him. She asked out loud how he dared to speak informally, since they had only just met. And since we're talking about social etiquette, shouldn't he himself observe it? Moreover, he is well aware of who she is, so he made an official apology. He went on to say that he was even willing to share any information that she might find interesting. And he said that recently, a lady appeared in the capital who introduced herself as the former Lady Lockhart, that she visited poor areas, created problems, and persecuted people. Enya said that it might be her aunt, who had long ago severed all ties with the family. But it was strange to her that the one who was hiding suddenly allowed her daughter to make scenes. Cassian added that the timing was strange, since the Duke and his family were not in the capital at the moment. Our heroine remembered that her aunt, the former Lady Lockhart, had always been the family favorite. But then she fell in love with a commoner and ran away, severing all ties with the ducal house. Her name is taboo, and even now my grandfather gets furious when anyone mentions her. That is why the commoners and the lower nobility would not dare to tell their grandfather about this. Perhaps this is what the criminal wants, so that the scandal will harm the Lockhart family. Did anyone really have the courage to target the family of the Emperor's supporters? Cassian asked her what she suspected of Duke Hexagon. She asked how he knew. My lord replied that even his pro-imperial Schultz family had problems with him, and when Hexagon's house arrest is lifted, the scandal will successfully damage Lockhart's reputation. Then I asked her if she thought it might be worth seeing who benefits the most from this. Besides, the Emperor is not in the capital either, so she can take up the investigation herself. She couldn't help but ask why he was helping her, since they had only met today. Although she understood that this really concerned her family, and she would have to intervene. Meanwhile, Cassian replied that in this way, he was repaying an old debt. He didn't explain what the debt was. He only said that he saw her and shared what he wanted. He said that he had to go, and if Dale found out that he had come, he would be very upset. A second later, he was no longer in the room, and her request to wait hung in the air. Sir Schultz teleported away, leaving her alone to ponder his words. She told Dale about this visit and asked if they knew each other. He replied that they were not friends. They had simply worked together before, and the artifact was part of the job. Enya didn't doubt his answer, since mercenaries often work with aristocrats. When he asked if Cassian had said anything strange, she replied that it was rather alarming. Dale asked worriedly what exactly, and she replied that he knew her identity. He told her that someone was pretending to be her cousin, and Dale apologized for not being able to help. He explained that he should have known about it first, since it was about the former Lady Lockhart. After what happened today, Enya tried to remember at least something about her aunt. Of course, she had talked a lot and often with her aunt, but she didn't remember the details. In fact, it wasn't just about her aunt, but part of Enya's memories seemed to have been erased from her memory. Perhaps if she meets her aunt, she will be able to restore her lost memories. Enya said out loud that she wanted to go to the capital to find out the whole truth about what was happening. She thought that since the Emperor and her family were not in the city at the moment, there was no better time. Our hero looked at her and asked if he could accompany her in that case. She was delighted, and he explained that they were currently looking for a person for some work in the capital. Enya understood that investigating alone increased the risks, and he was a reliable partner. Then they agreed that they would go together, and within a few days they were in the capital. Dale got busy and got her a camouflage potion to remain incognito. Our heroine was glad that he went with her, and at first everything went smoothly. Suddenly, she saw her brother and was surprised. He should not have been in the capital. Samuel Lockhart looked in her direction and even called her name. She panicked. When she heard him say her name, she felt as if he could recognize her even in this form. Dragging Dale around the corner, she asked him to be quiet because she saw her brother on the street. Dale said that a guy with silver hair and blue eyes was walking towards them. Samuel actually walked down the street to verify his suspicions. She had no idea how her brother could recognize her in this state, and didn't know what to do now. However, her companion came up with an idea, but he no longer had time to explain. Our heroine's brother himself did not know why he mistook this girl for his sister, but he followed her. He was puzzled by his sudden impulse, but he needed to know the truth. My intuition told me it was Enya, although my other feelings said otherwise. When he saw the couple in love, he felt extremely embarrassed that he had disturbed them. Having apologized to them, he wandered on with a dejected look. He felt uneasy. Could he have been mistaken? The girl looked similar, but she had a completely different hair color. Moreover, Enya has been on the run for 3 years and cannot appear in the capital. Our heroes, meanwhile, broke away from each other and looked at the deserted street. Dale also didn't really want anyone to find out about their arrival on the first day. He told Enya that her brother was gone. It was all over, and they were now completely safe. Knowing that the kiss was a cover didn't help calm my pounding heart. She continued to taste his lips and was completely confused by what had happened. She looked so taken aback that Dale began to worry about it. So he asked if everything was okay, but she was only thinking about the touch of their lips. Dale spoke quickly, saying that he hadn't meant to scare her, that he had panicked, trying to find a solution. Enya replied that everything was fine. She was just scared that her brother might see her. What did Samuel think when she was away? And he ended up on patrol and suggested going home. Our hero also felt awkward, which is why he acted so impulsively and agreed. When they entered his house, she immediately dropped her disguise. It was not needed here. However, Enya was extremely surprised. The house was in a quiet area and even had a nice garden. Do A-rank mercenaries really earn so much that they can afford such an apartment? Inside, it turned out to be much more spacious than she expected. There was even a third floor. She wanted to look at everything as quickly as possible, and she did not deny herself the pleasure. The room she entered was simply magnificent, and the view from the window was pleasing to the eye. She was indescribably delighted with the small garden, and with the house itself in general. She wanted to share this with Dale, but he was still under the impression of his mistake. That's why he said that the house was old and empty. She might be uncomfortable. He would find another one. To which Enya replied that it was just the opposite. The house was amazing, and she had no complaints. She added that she was surprised that there was such a wonderful place in the capital, and it was simply something. After these words, his heart was lifted, and he said that he was lucky to buy this house. And since this room was the sunniest, he suggested that Enya settle in it. When she asked where his room was, he replied that he had to walk a little further next door. He walked forward with confident steps and opened the door, but stopped dead in his tracks. Even he didn't expect to see this. For some reason, the room turned out to be empty. He was speechless. Her room was fully furnished. Everything was prepared there. There was a bed there, perfect for two, and decorated with rose petals. I remembered my servants, whom I asked not to go so far, but they clearly overdid it. Enya said she thought he couldn't use this room as a bedroom. Dale replied that he had been in such a rush to prepare for the trip that he had left the cleaning up to others, and apparently they didn't put in a second bed, but he can sleep on the sofa in the living room. But she couldn't allow that, and suggested sleeping together, since her bed was huge. He was clearly stunned by the proposal, and she didn't want to pressure him. That's why she said that, like a normal married couple, they should sleep in the same bedroom. However, remembering the awkward situation in the morning, she promised that she would not touch him. She added that he had nothing to worry about. She would sleep on the left, and he on the left. When she built a wall of pillows, he thought it was going to be a long ride. And no matter how funny this situation looked, they were tired and therefore quickly fell asleep. Our heroine had a very strange dream. An epidemic had begun in the capital. A severe skin disease quickly spread among aristocratic women. People were gossiping that the itching was so severe that it drove girls crazy. The disease leaves terrible scars, and many ladies have taken drastic measures. And apparently, it was all about the makeup. At that moment, Enya woke up in a cold sweat. I jumped up and thought it was a dream, but it was all too realistic to be a dream. Was this really the case in the original? Or was it something like the story with the aunt I forgot about? Sometimes, when she had dreams like these, memories would surface. But now she dreamed of an epidemic. It was too much, and she looked at Dale. He slept so peacefully next to her that he attracted her with his beautiful appearance alone. She thought that, although she was worried, everything had worked out for her so far. And besides, he was nearby now. After asking him if he was sleeping, I remembered that it had been difficult for him to fall asleep before, but now everything was different. Her thoughts were that he was probably tired from work, but still went with her to the capital. Our heroine was so grateful to him for his care that she kissed him tenderly. He opened his eyes slightly and looked at the door, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. He restrained himself with incredible difficulty so as not to give away himself and his feelings. She had already fallen asleep next to him again, and Dale thought that he wouldn't be able to stand it for much longer and would go crazy. In the morning, Enya announced their plan for the day. He would go and negotiate with the guild, and she, having finished with the disguise, will go in search of her false cousin. According to Dale, she should check out a boutique she frequents. Once they had discussed the plan, Dale quickly turned around and said that he understood everything. From the very morning his behavior seemed strange to her, he looked terribly embarrassed. And then it dawned on her that Dale had apparently not been sleeping, or had simply woken up at the moment of her kiss. Dale, however, was not having an easy time, and he tried his best not to show his feelings. He stood outside the door for a few minutes, trying to cope with the overwhelming sensations. Our heroine quickly found the very boutique that Dale told her about. It was a small shop that was so beloved by the recently rich commoners. She even hoped to find something useful if the fake cousin was shopping here. I overheard a conversation between two employees who still hadn't found what she asked for. One girl complained that the lady even threatened to get what she wanted. Judging by the saleswoman's words, Lady Lockhart might come in today, which would be to Enya's advantage. When the saleswoman approached and offered her help, Enya did not respond right away. She was more preoccupied with the thought that she would finally be able to see the fake in person. She didn't want to upset the girl, so she said that she would look around a little first. After all, it was necessary to stall for time and wait until she appeared in this boutique. I didn't have to wait long. Soon a lady with silver hair flew into the boutique. And with blue eyes, like our heroines, she shouted whether her order was ready today. Could this really be Lady Lockhart, the fake aristocrat who causes scandals? Enya asked the saleswoman just in case, and she dispelled all doubts. The girl said that the lady was constantly terrifying, but at the same time, she was a terrible spendthrift. Then I asked Enya which aristocratic house she was from, but she avoided answering. Moreover, it was not difficult. All attention was focused on the screaming visitor. They kindly replied that they had not yet completed the order, but could offer other models. They offered a new silk dress, which was specially set aside for Lady Lockhart. The fake aristocrat behaved disgustingly and did not want to look at these rags. By chance, in a fallen mannequin, the visitor's displeased gaze fell on Enya. She said, "Here it is. The antique style, like velvet fabric for the embroidery of the Western Mountains." Then she asked who she was and why she was wearing the dress she wanted so much. Turning to the saleswomen, she told them not to tell her that they had already sold it. I turned to Enya and asked where she got it from. Since it wasn't available in any boutique in the capital, our heroine felt that something was wrong. The fake was behaving extremely aggressively, but she seems to be genuinely nervous, and her hands are shaking like crazy. Swinging her arm, Milady screamed, "How dare they show off what she doesn't have?" The situation was clearly getting out of control. Enya didn't know what she could do, but help came from a completely unexpected direction. My lady's hand was intercepted. Cassian looked at the fake and asked if they had ever met before. Enya almost said his name, but stopped herself in time. She couldn't give away her identity. However, what is Marquis Schultz, the youngest head of the tower, doing in such a place? Meanwhile, my lady came to her senses and angrily said that such behavior was outrageous. He hissed back that it was not for a liar, a pretending lady, to tell him about manners. Osoba stated that he accused her of impersonating Lady Lockhart. The Marquis asked if she had been present at that very imperial banquet. Realizing that she had lost, the fake replied that he had made a mistake and had clearly mistaken her for someone else. On the way out, she threw out that he would regret this, and that the Lockhart household would not leave it like this. Thanking him for his help, Enya asked if he had followed her here on purpose. Cassian asked him not to speak so rudely. Couldn't he just be worried? They were attracting unnecessary attention, so the Marquis suggested moving to another place. Our heroine, of course, agreed, especially since the mission in the boutique was accomplished. But what was her surprise when, a couple of seconds later, she saw the doors of her house. She guessed that it was teleportation, but how could he do it without the scroll? When I asked him about this, I heard in response that for the head of the tower, this is a basic skill. Then she asked the next question, how did he know exactly where she was staying? Cassian suggested they go inside, where he could also treat the injury on her wrist. Enya asked what happened to the fake lady. She ran away. He replied that he would figure it out, and that he has no doubt that it is a fake, and has already managed to find out something. She had once at a ball already pretended to be Lady Lockhart, and today he was convinced of it. Then he asked Enya if she had actually gone to the boutique to gather information. When he heard her affirmative answer, he said that he thought she had another reason. He assumed she had visited the store to pick out a birthday present for Dale. Enya was very worried. How could it be that no one told her about this? And although he asked her not to be nervous, she hurried to have time to buy a gift. She was so busy that she kept bumping into Cassian, and he kept jumping back. Suddenly, the door opened, and Dale, who had returned, appeared on the threshold. There was a deathly silence in the hall. No one knew what to do with the situation. As expected, Dale took things as they came. His eyes flashing angrily, he pounced on the offender, asking what he was doing with Enya. She had never seen Dale so angry before, and was very confused at first. He demanded an explanation for what Cassian had done to her that caused her to have bruises on her wrist. Our heroine stood up for him, saying that it was a misunderstanding and asked him to calm down. When Dale asked what he was doing there, the Marquise replied that Enya was showing him the house. He added that he was about to leave anyway and asked to let go of his collar. Enya said they met by chance in a boutique and then chatted for a bit. Again, by accident, she lost her balance and he helped her, so there is no need to worry. To keep him talking about her bruises, she changed the subject to the fact that it was dinner time. Cassian said that if he stayed shamelessly, he could become the main dish on the table. Having said goodbye, he said at the door that he would soon bring her good news. Over dinner, Enya explained the bruises again and asked about his progress. Dale shared that he was meeting with Guildmaster Kolopelt tomorrow morning. He said that Lumiston production is declining, which is why the price has quadrupled. Lumiston is usually used for heating, but it is also beautiful and can be used to make jewelry. Every year, Celopelt helps the poor with heating by distributing the remaining Lumistones. Dale asked if she would like to join him tomorrow for a meeting with Kelopelt. She was surprised. Then he explained that she would be better able to present her proposal. She had prepared a proposal that might interest them, just in case. So she agreed, then said that she heard that he needed something. He looked at Enya in surprise, but she decided not to tell him what she had planned for now. After all, this was her first gift to Dale, and she thought it would be better to make it a surprise. The next day, they went straight to the headquarters of the Kolopelt Trade Guild in the morning. Enya unconsciously lost control of her facial expression, as she had not slept all night. She was thinking about what to give her, and he, noticing her tiredness, inquired about this question. She evasively explained that she was nervous because this was her first such deal. She asked them not to worry about trifles, and the head of the guild was probably already waiting for them. The head thanked our heroes for having come all this way and invited them to sit down. Enya was even a little surprised that they were greeted so warmly. Was Dale really that impressive? The man realized that the Emperor had come disguised, and with Lady Lockhart. That, remembering the favor, he will be forced to make concessions. But he is still a merchant. He asked if maybe we could continue discussing the deal we had talked about earlier. I heard that they have a large number of Lumistons and first wants to hear their conditions. When she voiced the price, the merchant said it was cheaper than other places, but expensive. He explained that with such a price, they could consider importing from abroad. Enya replied that they could not guarantee the quality of foreign Lumistones, and she asked to first evaluate the goods from Greenwald. After examining them, the head was shocked. He could not hide his surprise and joy that the rights to the prey had returned to the Lord. He said that with such quality, Greenwald will soon become a prosperous territory. But when he saw the inscriptions on the Lumiston, he asked where they came from and why they damaged the goods. Our heroine, looking bored, replied that it was not damage, but a guarantee of quality. Celopelt has become famous for its quality, and if anyone buys stones here, they will notice. She explained that recently, traders have been selling counterfeit products, passing them off as Kelopelt. A paper certificate is easy to counterfeit, but this one made by an alchemist cannot be counterfeited. This guarantee mark will ensure trust and allow the guild to spread its name wider. Celopelt occupies the first place in the empire, but they want to expand their influence. One of the ways is through social contribution, so they reinforced a positive image. Enya suggested distributing Lumistones with a handmade certificate to the poor this year, and if she were in his place, she would not have missed such an opportunity to make it a symbol. The merchant was impressed by her skills, and, despite her defeat, agreed to the deal. At the last moment, Enya even managed to include her herbs in this deal. Dale said he was glad everything went so smoothly, and that she liked it. Then, he said that he still needed to go somewhere, and asked her to return first. Remembering the gift, she said that she wanted to give him something, and asked him to close his eyes. Our hero had no idea why she wanted this, but he decided that there was no point in resisting. Although he was terribly curious about what this restless Lady Lockhart was up to again, when he was given permission, he opened his eyes and saw the gloves she had made herself. She apologized that they might be untidy, but asked to accept them as a gift. Now he guessed why she looked sleep-deprived. She was preparing a present for him. She said she wanted to take care of him because he was a mercenary and they always had cold hands. Dale said that these gloves were absolutely beautiful, and he would treasure them for the rest of his life. Returning home, our heroine thought that she had succeeded with the gift. They had a wonderful birthday celebration and finished preparing for his return. Even the incident with the fake lady seems to have been successfully concluded, and the contract has been signed. The only thing that upset her was the fact that she still couldn't remember anything from the past. Thinking that she didn't want to violate Dale's personal space, She decided to pack his things, just things, because she had to leave first anyway, and she opened the wardrobe door. So much stuff fell out of it that some of the signs hit her on the top of her head. Looking at the contents of the cabinet, our heroine was stunned. This was not what she expected to see. There were all sorts of Dale's identification cards scattered across the floor, and there were a lot of them. They all belonged to him, she tried to understand. He, who changed jobs so often. Moreover, some of them looked completely new, as if they had never been used. If you think about it, there are too many strange things in Dale besides the ID cards. Again, a suspiciously large house in the capital, even if it was bought on the cheap. Moreover, he often went somewhere at night and never said anything about it. Of course, they agreed not to interfere in each other's personal lives. But she didn't want to doubt. She decided to ask as soon as he returned, and at that moment she heard his voice. Before she could even begin the conversation, she heard a note of anxiety in his voice, and he spoke. Dale told her that he had just found out that their house in Greenwald had collapsed. As he was told, he collapsed due to heavy snowfall, and Enya postponed the conversation. Our heroine looked at her house in Greenwald and couldn't believe her eyes. After all, no matter how heavy the snowfall, how could an entire house fall in just one night? Dale replied that it was all his fault. There was a lot of snow here, and it needed to be cleared away. And while they were in the capital, it seems that much more snow fell than they expected. I thought that they were right, that Greenwald is greatly influenced by weather conditions. She said out loud that it was early spring now, and they could be happy that they had almost no luggage. I thought, considering what they took with them, there wasn't much important left in the house. Then I began to remember what exactly was left in the house. But we didn't take much on the trip. Something began to bother her, something very important. And then she remembered her suitcase. Then she thought that she wouldn't take it this time, but it was very important luggage. She rushed to the house, not listening to Dale. She thought only about what was left in the house. The suitcase contained all sorts of valuable herbal samples and rare seeds. Rushing towards her, Dale asked her not to touch anything and that he would rather call someone to help. But she didn't want to hear nothing. The contents of the suitcase were so important that our heroine forgot about caution and pulled the luggage out from under the rubble. Her rash and hasty actions caused the entire house to come into motion. Enya saw part of the roof falling on her, and her sense of self-preservation failed her. Her heart sank with fear, but she only closed her eyes, hoping that she would fall next to him. She opened her eyes. Her heart started pounding again. She was not hurt at all, but why? Feeling his hand on her shoulder, our heroine felt more confident. His presence always gave her strength. She raised her head with gratitude in her eyes. Only then did she understand what had happened, and she became even more afraid, only now for him. When he asked how she was, Enya replied that now was not the time to worry about her. As Dale climbed out from under the rubble, he said that as long as she was okay, he was okay too. She asked him not to talk nonsense, adding that he needed to be examined urgently. To see if there were any serious wounds on his body, she asked him to lift up his shirt. To his surprise, right there, she replied that it really didn't matter where they were, saying that since she insisted, Dale fulfilled her request, despite the frost and snow. Just by looking at his back, I could tell for sure that he must be in a lot of pain. She reproached herself for ignoring his warning and rushing into things. I asked him if he had any trouble breathing, or if he felt like something was broken. He replied that everything would be fine, but she knew that it wouldn't be, and she had to act. Dale said the snow was getting heavier by the minute, and she knew he was right, but she urgently needed to treat her wounds, so he suggested going to a hotel. This was the right decision, otherwise he could have caught a cold. Having reached the hotel and treated the wounds, she said that these herbs are good for bruises, but there was no need to worry, because there were no more serious injuries. She wrapped his wounds in clean bandages and asked him to tell her when they got dirty. He felt awkward because there was only one free room left in the hotel. Enya asked him not to apologize. She understands that there are more workers in the city now, but he saw that something was bothering her and said that she didn't have the best expression on her face. In fact, circumstances thwarted her plans to talk to him about her suspicions. Despite being a mercenary, he acted very nobly towards her, and although he overexerted himself using the scrolls, he never told her exactly what he was doing. She really wanted to believe him, but she needed to hear everything directly from him. With a heavy sigh, Dale said that she seemed uncomfortable, and he would find another place. He misunderstood her, and the reason was different, so she stopped him. Enya blurted out almost quickly that everything was wrong, and he didn't need to go anywhere. Looking closely at his face, she guessed that he had a fever. He did have a fever, so she asked him where he was going in that condition. He stopped and looked into her eyes and said that he didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. She thought that he had suffered while trying to protect her, and that this made it even more painful for her. But at the same time, he carefully watches her facial expression, worrying about her. Our heroine thought how she could be such a fool, and tears started flowing from her eyes. This made an inexplicable impression on him. He had never seen her like this before, and she thought about what happened. She clearly felt that Dale cared about her, so she couldn't even think that it could all be a lie, and she called him. He responded, and then she said if he didn't like seeing her uncomfortable. She continued by saying that in that case, she asked him to rely on her today. Our hero listened to her request, and then she was able to measure his temperature. As she had expected, the fever was intense, and she was glad that it still remained. She said out loud that she knew that Dale, working as a mercenary, had it easier than ordinary people, and she remembered again what she had thought when she saw the wounds on his back a little earlier. She continued that when he feels bad, he should tell her and not keep his mouth shut. She said that she was a doctor and thought that if it had been another person, she would have smelled the disease. She had her suspicions, but that explained it all. Her abilities didn't work on Dale, neither at the first meeting nor when he fell after using the teleportation scroll. She felt nothing and thought it was because her abilities were not sufficient. She could only state that she couldn't smell because of the pile of bruises and the fever. But she was no closer to understanding this phenomenon. At that moment, he called her. She asked if he felt uncomfortable. He replied that he was interested in something. When he asked her why she was crying, Enya replied that, of course, it was all because she was worried about Dale. Dale said it was kind of her to take care of him, but she didn't take care of herself. And this upsets him, because he is a mercenary and his duty is to protect Miss Enya. She replied that they had a fictitious marriage and that she had not asked him to push herself to the limit. She added that her fiancé was originally the emperor, and Dale could be in danger. But in that case, she will break the contract and leave, because she values him very much. Quite unexpectedly, he grabbed her hand and begged her not to leave him. She was puzzled by his reaction, so she said she didn't say she was leaving now. He had a miserable face when he asked if she was disappointed to see him like this. Our heroine would never have thought that Dale could be so worried. She didn't want to upset him, and asked if he wanted her to stay close. His answer was affirmative. Enya thought deeply about what was happening. He didn't seem like his usual self. Maybe this is his way of trying to trust her. She asked him not to worry, and added that she would be there when he woke up tomorrow. Then she repeated that she had already said that he could completely rely on her today, and that even if he is in such a state, she will not turn away from him, even more so. Smiling, she added that rather she realized how dear he was to her. Although inside, she continued to find his identification suspicious. But I couldn't say that all his actions were a lie. Maybe it was all about his work. She knew it sounded like an excuse, but she wanted to hear what he had to say. Once again, she asked me not to worry, and advised me to have a good rest and recuperate. When she said she would take care of him, memories came flooding back. The girl told him that she promised that she would definitely cure him, and that he would not be in pain. And then she said, "Let's quickly make a pinky swear," but he didn't know what that was. This was all new to him, as he had never interacted with girls before, and he didn't understand at all what she wanted from him. But she asked, "So we won't swear." As she continued to extend her little finger, he carefully took it between his fingers. It seemed to him at that moment that he had fulfilled her request and asked her name. The girl was genuinely amused and cheerfully replied that her name was Enya Lockhart. Then she asked me to call her simply Enya, and then she suggested meeting again. But she didn't have those memories left. They disappeared just like some others. Dale spoke again and said that it seemed he would be in her care for a while. However, Enya understood this even without these words. After putting him to bed, she wished him good night. Warm light came through the window, filling the room with a feeling of calm and warmth. She woke up when the sun's rays played on her face, gently awakening her from sleep. Stretching, she thought that it was really morning already, but she didn't want to get up at all. Not understanding why it felt so cramped, I remembered that I had been looking after Dale all last night. At that moment, she felt a little awkward from having spent so much time with him. What surprised her most was the feeling of warmth and calm that she felt. However, she still felt awkward, so she tried to turn around. Dale was still fast asleep, and they were so close that she wanted to move. She tried again to carefully get out before he woke up, but to no avail. She couldn't do anything because even in his sleep, he was incredibly strong. After checking his temperature, I realized that it had dropped. but it was still worth giving him a couple of medications. But looking at his handsome face so closely, for some reason, she was overcome with a feeling of déjà vu. At that moment, he woke up, and when he opened his eyes, their gazes naturally met. For a few moments, they looked at each other in complete silence, as if the world around them had frozen. She broke the silence and asked if he had slept well, and everything changed dramatically. He looked terribly scared, so she still asked if everything was okay. Dale asked fearfully, "He didn't do anything wrong last night." Realizing what he meant, she replied convincingly that nothing of the sort had happened. Still hesitant, he asked why they slept in the same bed then. Enya calmly replied that there was nothing strange about it, because they were those same friends, adding that she realized that Dale was a much more valuable person than she had previously thought. And that's why they are friends who can always rely on each other when needed. He repeated to rely and continued, because they became special to each other. His expression became a little sad, and he said that it was not enough for him. However, Dale did not pursue this thought further, and said that he would accept this for now. They will be friends, because he also wants to have a special relationship with Enya. Our heroine reflected on some of the things Dale had said. After all, upon closer examination, they can easily be misinterpreted. To say something like that, he wants a special relationship with her, and with such an expression on his face, she convinced herself that he didn't mean anything like that. She was just imagining things. Dale is just an honest and open person, and she didn't do anything indecent. Hearing footsteps behind her, she turned around and saw that Dale had already washed himself. Enya asked him to take a look, and she had a couple of ideas for a new house. Showing from the recording, she said that it was not far from their current home, but closer to Greenwald, and she thinks that an area where houses are located closer to each other would be ideal. But this is her list of wishes, but she will be happy if at least a couple of them come true. I asked him if he really thought such houses existed, and he replied that he already had ideas, to which she replied that it was he who asked her to share her wishes, and she spoke without thinking, but he knows that he shouldn't be too zealous. Our hero smiled and said that he wanted his loved one to be comfortable. Just a week later, she looked at the house and wasn't sure it was their home. When she asked how he found this place, he replied that it used to belong to a lord. It was originally an aristocratic villa, but was sold on the market because it was not being used. Given the heavy snowfall in Greenwald, villas like these are rarely used. Enya said she felt depressed, but it turned out they were lucky. She liked it here and said that he would see how beautiful it would be here in the spring. He replied that he would look forward to it and suggested that they go inside. However, the surprises did not end there, because they were met by a new housekeeper. To her logical question, he replied that he had called all these workers in advance. Since the house was too big for the two of them, he thought that servants were necessary. Dale whispered that he wouldn't be living in this house forever, but she didn't need to worry. She asked him where he would live then, and he said that he would have separate housing. The housekeeper said that they would sort everything out and would not interfere with their happy family life. Marie introduced the chef, the gardener, and the other servants who would be helping at the estate. Enya was grateful for the concern, but it was not easy to hire these workers on his salary. She was very curious about where such a huge amount of money could have come from. However, just when she thought it would be nice to have a garden near the house, it appeared, now she has a good opportunity to establish cultivation of high-quality herbs. She tried to offer help with paying the staff, but Dale flatly refused. Moreover, her fears turned out to be unfounded. The staff left immediately after finishing work. Among them, Miss Marie, who works as a housekeeper, has professional training. It's as if she possesses the very discipline that can be felt in the imperial palace. Our heroine thought that perhaps these were unfounded suspicions because of the emperor. The housekeeper greeted the lady and reported that she had tidied up the room a little. In the original, the emperor was meticulous and pedantic, cautious and a strategist. He always got what he wanted and was probably waiting for the moment when she let her guard down. Enya decided that it was worth asking Emma to investigate, just in case. In the meantime, I started reading a letter addressed to the most beautiful Miss Enya in the world. Emma reported that she had found out nothing about the disease that Enya was interested in. But if your heart skips a beat when you see another person, then you are in love. Our heroine thought that she shouldn't have asked the maid about strange things. And yet, reading her letters, Enya wanted to see her, and the others too. She ran away from home without telling anyone. Her father is probably worried. Enya often thought about everyone who remained in the estate. She was interested in how they were doing. Her father, Duke Marcus Lockhart, also missed his missing daughter very much. For the first time in all these years that he had not seen Enya, the Duke decided to enter her chambers. He entered a room that had been closed all this time, and only servants entered it. Memories flooded my lord, and his heart ached with unbearable sadness. I felt how the past was constantly returning and suffocating me with its weight. There was no news from Enya, he muttered. Where did you go? What did you get yourself into? There was no answer. He was lost in his thoughts and did not immediately notice the maids. Seeing Emma, he called her over and said that a lot of time had passed since Enya's escape. The maid said evasively that she very much hoped the young lady was safe. The Duke asked if she was the same child that Enya often took with her as a child. Enya, who spent her entire life between the duchy and the capital, disappeared for 3 years. And she stopped where he can't find his daughter without anyone's help. With a bitter smile, my lord added that in a sense this was something to be proud of. He called the maid by name and began talking about when Enya was little. And he continued, she saved the former head of the clan, her grandfather, and received land as a gift. Currently, the seal of the head of the Lockhart family is required to sell this land. And putting the signet ring into the maid's palms, he said, but something happened that he did not expect. After a somewhat theatrical pause, he said that it turned out that the land had been sold without his knowledge. The maid did not answer his question about how this happened, although the Duke had already drawn his conclusions. Therefore, he said that it seemed that she knew perfectly well where the signet ring should be kept, asked Emma to put it where it belongs, and to give Enya my best wishes. And he also asked me to tell my daughter that she would soon have to return to the capital. Emma wrote that she heard that Enya was going to the capital soon, but the Emperor could be behind this. At her request, I inquired about the servants hired by Dale, but did not find anything suspicious, and she advised Enya to really marry him in order to avoid his majesty. At the end, she added that the current Duke is much softer than the previous one, so there is a way out. Seeing Enya burning the letter, he asked if it wasn't a message for her. Having answered that this was the case, she explained that this was why she was covering her tracks, since she was on the run. And she thought that the maid was talking nonsense, as if she didn't think much about Dale without her. They are a fake couple, and she proposed it first, so there shouldn't be any weird feelings. What a stupid idea, to become a real couple with him. It's not even worth thinking about. But still, if she had not been on the run from the Emperor, she might have agreed. Considering that the Emperor is still looking for her, she and Dale are not destined to be together. While thinking, our heroine, without even noticing it, began to express her thoughts out loud. And she said, it would be wonderful if Dale were the Emperor, and he heard. Choking with surprise, he asked why she was suddenly saying such a thing. Enya asked if she had accidentally compared him to His Majesty and apologized. She explained that she simply thought that if Dale were Emperor, everything would be better. Then she said that he had better change his clothes, and they went upstairs. Looking at the bookcase, she said that it seemed that her book had ended up there by mistake. Taking it from the shelf, she added that she had read it a long time ago, but it was nice to see it again. It was her favorite book, that's why she remembered it. It was the novel The Lady of the Night, one of the most famous novels of Madame Cosette. She is often called the mistress of novels. A sad story about a girl locked in a tower and saved by a young man passing by. After apologizing for getting carried away again, I asked Dale if he wasn't interested in novels. He replied that there was no need to be embarrassed, because he also liked novels. Enya said, so that's the reason why he could still speak sweetly. She became interested again and asked if there was a novel that had impressed him the most. Our hero mumbled the word novel and remembered the effort he had to put in. A few days ago, Soho, the commander of the Imperial Squad Zeta, was reading a new novel. Getty approached him and asked what he had done with the Emperor's capital mansion. The deputy commander continued, saying that the Emperor was very keen to kill Soho. The commander replied that he had prepared the mansion in such a way as to help them get a little closer. Then Getty said that since he was so smart, let him read a couple of novels, and then he will briefly outline the essence of the novels so that the Emperor can use this for discussion. Soho replied that for an unrivaled genius like him, it was as easy as pie, and maybe it would be better to help the Emperor with something more practical for developing relations. However, His Majesty had already arrived and heard the last remark spoken by Soho. The squad leader asked if sleeping in the same bed had helped the relationship. Without answering the question, he demanded that 40 novels be studied at the level of a scientific work. Soho couldn't believe his ears, but he couldn't disobey the Emperor's direct order. His Majesty did not want to repeat the same mistake twice, so he prepared. He didn't have time to look through all the novels, but he remembered one clearly. He spoke about the Duke's proposal, where selfless acts impressed him. Enya replied that it was a beautiful novel, but it was known for its sad ending. Then Dale asked, "Because being together is not the only way to be happy." Enya noted that it sounded logical coming from him, and he didn't quite understand her answer. She explained that he would treat his partner well, even if it meant sacrificing himself. He treats her so well, and I'm sure his other half will be incredibly happy. She wondered if any of the stories he read had a happy ending. He didn't have time to think of a good ending, so he named the first one that came to mind. It was a novel that Soho was reading about why Lady Brittany only gave meat to the groom James. Enya was extremely surprised and could not believe that Dale read such books. This book, or rather novel, was rated for age, especially since he was a man. So, he likes books like this, but it turns out she still doesn't know a lot about him. Continuing to reflect on this topic, she did not get distracted from her work. But then a shadow fell. Raising her head, she saw an unexpected guest. Marquis Schultz stood in front of her. After greeting our heroine, he asked if he could distract her for a moment. She asked him what brought him there, and how he even knew that she had moved. Cassian answered evasively that nothing was impossible for the head of the magic tower. Besides, he warned her when he said that they would meet again soon. Enya remembered that he had actually spoken about it, but it had completely slipped her mind. But by and large, it was now more interesting to find out what reason had brought him here. My lord reported that the problem with the fake lady had been resolved, and Hexagon was behind it. It was obvious that he had ordered her to do everything to tarnish the reputation of the Lockhart house. Thanking him for his help, Enya added that it was quite a difficult matter, but he clearly didn't come all this way just to talk about it. Cassian said that it seemed like she was the one tending this herb garden, and there should be more of them. He turned the conversation so abruptly to her garden that she could not help but assume the worst. She felt uneasy, but she still asked if he was feeling unwell. He replied that he had originally planned to slowly inherit the title of Marquise, but something unexpected happened because his father, Halo Schultz, passed away. In the original, apart from the fact that he was Cassian's father, there was practically no mention of him. Cassian took over as head of the Magic Tower at a young age and became a Marquise. Halo Schultz died very young, unexpectedly, and no cause of death was given. The guest spoke again and said that he too could die young, just like his father. Enya couldn't believe it. Could Cassian really die for the same reason? She wanted to ask, but he had said earlier that the toxins caused by mana were corroding the body. The Schultz family is famous for its powerful mages, endowed with exceptional mana. But mages have a weakness. The more mana they use, the more toxins accumulate. When the accumulated residual energy reaches a certain level, they begin to hurt. However, they usually don't use enough mana to reach a critical stage. But the Schultz family has high-ranking magicians, which means a lot of residual energy accumulates. Enya said that toxins need to be removed regularly, but because of the hexagon, everything went wrong. All detoxifying herbs were monopolized and supplied by the Duke's house. Cassian continued that the Emperor had stripped Hexagon of his power, and Hexagon had stripped the tower of its cure. She asked if the Marquise had failed to develop an alternative antidote. The guest asked her to watch her words and not call it a failure, but part of the process and experience. The antidote requires an extract from the rare Caristella flower, but the Duke has monopolized it. He even visited the temple where the supply was kept, but the warehouse where it was stored burned to the ground in one night. Realizing that Hexagon had done everything on purpose, she said that without the flower, the Marquise was in danger. Cassian replied that everything was correct, and that was why he had come to ask if she had Caristella. She replied that a couple of things didn't add up, since the Emperor had declared this herb to have a special purpose. This meant that the Empire began to purchase it through official channels and study its cultivation, thus limiting the monopolization of the hexagon, and private individuals are prohibited from owning it. And then, the House of Marquis Schultz is one of the 2 moons that support the Empire's sun. If there were a herb like Caristella, the Emperor would give it to the Marquise. And since this is not so, it means that no one in the entire Empire except Hexagon has this herb. And the last reason why he came to her was to test the family's loyalty. Perhaps you are revealing some secret, or this is a way to open a path of communication between houses. And although their houses are in the same imperial faction, they are still quite far from each other. Once again, the Duke will soon be released, so it is high time to make the necessary preparations. After apologizing, the Marquis said that little was known about the lady, so there was a small check. He hopes that this will serve as a start for communication, and as someone in need, he takes the first step. After all, it is Schultz's house that is in dire need. But as he understands, she also does not have Caristella. He added that he was sorry, but she still so gently lowered him back to the ground. She liked his honesty, so she asked what he said that she didn't have. And she added to the stunned Cassian that she had saved a few seeds just in case. She asked them to follow her, and when they got up, she opened her magic suitcase. She said he was lucky. Last time she almost lost the suitcase with all its contents. She said that she took everything that could be sold, so as not to die of hunger on the run. The Lockhart family lived a devout life, and the temple provided them with a large plot of land. The land was used for burials, and it so happened that the flower blossomed there. She added that they made a generous donation to the temple, but might charge an additional fee. She asked him to choose quickly, and Cassian laughed and said that he now understood. It's clear to him why Dale is so crazy about having her around, and he doubts he'll get bored. After laughing, my lord said that, well, they should probably make a deal, and he asked what she wanted in return, suggesting that it was unlikely to be anything trivial. He explained that it was money, and she wondered what she could get from Cassian. I thought it was information, because in the original, he was the Emperor's only friend. That's why she said she wanted information, so that he would tell her everything he knew about His Majesty. He asked again, and then said that he thought she might know more than him. Enya replied that this was not true at all. She had never even met the Emperor. My lord asked if she had not run away from home and was hiding to avoid the meeting. So why are you interested now? And she replied that it was obviously because of Dale. As is known, the Emperor proposed to her, but she married a commoner. She explained that Dale was in danger, and if she could get more information. With difficulty restraining himself, Cassian replied that he more or less understood what she wanted. He can't just sit and watch his friend get hurt, so he'll help. But first, I would like to agree on the price. She replied, only 2 million. And it seems he doesn't really need the seeds, he retorted, that's the price for each seed. She still thought that 2 million was not very profitable, and Cassian corrected her. He said that he didn't talk about 2, because he realized their true value, and he knows that this plant is rare, so he estimates there are 20 million of them. Enya said she agreed to the price, but on one condition, and he resisted. But our heroine was already in a frenzy, so she said she could sell it for 25. Meanwhile, Dale returned home and thought that he was still not in the best shape. And although he hides everything quite well, it seems that Enya has not noticed anything yet. But there is no progress in finding another way to enter the palace other than scrolls. He thought he was getting weaker, but here was Enya, who was waiting for him, and he stopped. Merry voices could be heard outside the door. Cassian was saying that my lady was asking too much. Enya responded that he could give more, because he hadn't forgotten that they had already signed a contract. The Marquis jokingly remarked that her words sounded like those of a thief, not my lady. But he did not finish the thought. Dale was ready to tear Cassian to shreds, but first he picked up a small photo. He couldn't even imagine that these two were discussing his childhood so cheerfully behind his back. Looking at the photo, he asked who allowed him to show it so casually. Enya saw that their actions had clearly upset Dale, but they had not meant to. Something needed to be done urgently, so she said that she asked to show it. She continued in an apologetic tone that she didn't think he would dislike it so much. She was just interested in learning about Dale's childhood, and they didn't talk about anything else. She said she just saw his childhood photo, and since Cassian is a friend, she thought, Dale didn't let her finish and asked if she was okay, which puzzled our heroine. Then he asked more specifically whether the photo made her feel sick or gave her a headache. Even more surprised, she asked again, looking at a photo of Dale as a child. She found it quite cute to look at baby photos, and his reaction was unclear. Our heroine was at a loss and could not understand what she had done wrong. Having made sure that Enya was okay, our hero turned to his friend. In an authoritative tone, he asked him to come out with him to have a serious talk. The Marquis hesitated a little, and then replied that yes, it was a personal conversation between friends. Enya couldn't even imagine that everything would be so serious, and whether it would be possible to leave them alone. But she understood that since she had not been invited, it was better for her not to interfere for the time being. Cassian also did not expect the Emperor to be so angry, and was not prepared for the consequences. Dale pushed him against the wall with a sharp movement and asked why he was provoking Enya. After all, she knows that awakening old memories will only cause her unbearable pain. But the Marquis was no weakling, so he replied that he too must take responsibility. Dale, without slowing down, asked why this responsibility included Enya's risks. The answer was that Dale saw that she was okay, and they couldn't hide forever. And the reason she can't remember His Majesty is technically related to him. They both knew what happened that day, and those memories would haunt them. Many years ago, young Cassian apologized to his heir for what he had done. In an apologetic tone, he said that he had done something wrong, and that he was very sorry. The prince listened to his friend, and then suddenly it began to dawn on him what had happened. But he couldn't let that happen. He couldn't let Enya get hurt because of Cassian, and he rushed as fast as he could. He had to make it in time, otherwise he wouldn't be able to live with this. The Marquis asked the Emperor to allow him a chance to help, at least now. Cassian cleared his throat and said that as a childhood friend of His Majesty, he truly asked, and no matter what the Emperor thinks about this, he wants to help correct the past. Our heroine was very worried, so when Dale returned, she asked where Cassian was, to which he asked not to worry, but Cassian had some business to attend to, and he saw him off. Then she apologized, because there must be a reason why he wants to talk about the past, and I thought that I was too careless. He might have painful memories. At this point, it was enough for our hero that she was okay. However, she added that now, if she was interested in anything, she would ask him, and she asked if she could treat him to a delicious dinner as an apology. Having answered that it sounded great, I thought about what would happen after she found out the whole truth. He sadly wondered if she would be able to continue smiling at him so brightly, but a second later, he threw these thoughts aside. He couldn't show his feelings. Another meeting was taking place in the Emperor's office, but he was dissatisfied with everything. Getty thought it was bad. None of the assistants' proposals satisfied him. If this continues, they will not only not be able to breathe freely in front of the Emperor, but the entire Zeta team will work overtime, not even thinking about their home. He was accustomed to wearing a mask and acting as a prompter when the Emperor was not around. Getty was at a loss as to who could offer the best birthday gift for a lady. It was Soho's turn, and the deputy thought that maybe at least this one wouldn't anger the Emperor. The commander said, as ordered. He chose gifts that might be liked. How to expect development and win a lady's heart with predictable gifts. It's time to go beyond the banal and have the courage to offer something unique. Madame Cosette's unprecedented new work is just what's needed right now. After all, her novels are so popular with the ladies, and this is a gift from the work of a writer who has been silent for a long time. A gift that suits her tastes. But it's just a book. Will Enya like it? Soho asked what they thought, since the ladies' drawers were probably overflowing with jewelry. The same applies to any other material thing she may acquire. And only the Emperor can present a new work by Madame Cosette's favorite author. Getty was already beginning to worry that if Soho continued this advertising, it would anger the monarch. However, the Emperor thought it was a good idea and praised the squad leader. He said that he hadn't done anything truly useful for a long time, and the book would be a gift. But Dale, in addition to government affairs, also had his own quiet life in the south of the country. Today, he and Enya went shopping, and he asked her to pass the bag. Our heroine replied that it was very sweet. But could she at least carry this one? She hadn't gone anywhere for a long time, and so she unknowingly bought a whole bunch of stuff. And all thanks to the Celopelt Guild, who opened the main road through Saloy. When he offered to carry her bag again, she told him to put it in the van. And what's the point of walking around with purchases all the time? And the delivery cart was nearby. Watching Dale, she thought he sometimes had a very strange stubbornness about him. Their attention was drawn to a noise behind them. A man had lost control of his boxes. Our heroine, as always, could not pass by when someone needed help. Now, having come up to him, she asked if everything was okay and asked Dale to help the man. The man thanked them for their help and added that it was nice to meet kind people. Enya replied that they would help carry his things to their destination if needed. After asking Dale if he was okay with it, she thought that the man seemed familiar to her for some reason. The stranger replied that his house was on the very outskirts, and he had come here because of the hospital. But now the carts have porters, so it won't be hard. He'll hire one. Enya offered her new friend a ride home, and Dale supported her. When they arrived, he said that his wife didn't really like inviting guests, so they were the first guests in a long time, and Enya thought that the house really was in the middle of nowhere. She also became interested in why her wife didn't like guests. Maybe she didn't like people at all. The owner of the house thanked them for coming all this way and offered them some tea. Our heroine noted that the tea had a delicious aroma, and the gentleman replied that his wife collects it herself. Enya couldn't shake the feeling that this smell was familiar to her, but from where? She couldn't answer the question for herself and decided that there was no point in thinking about it for so long. But the truth is, when she took the first sip, she realized that the taste of this tea was also very familiar to her. Then her gaze fell on the bookshelves, and she noticed Madame Cosette's novels. And after asking the owner about this, I found out that these books were part of his wife's collection. She said enthusiastically that there were so many of them, from famous novels to those not yet finished. It was a complete collection of her works, and she added that Dale liked novels too. The owner was slightly surprised, and Enya explained that he preferred a slightly different genre. Then she said that she had an effective remedy, and it would help the owner's bones grow together. And if he brews it in the morning and evening, it will help him recover faster. He thanked them for their concern and asked them to wait. He wanted to repay their kindness, but Enya refused, so he offered to give her some tea leaves to take home with her to drink. Afterwards, they said goodbye, and our heroine thought that maybe fate would bring them together again. When she returned home, she apologized to Dale, as it had been difficult for him. He brushed it off, saying that these were small things, but they helped the man in a difficult moment. And he added that he had actually prepared a small birthday present for her. Dale told her that he left it on the table in the living room, and she could go look. She was delighted, but said that she would first help him unpack his things. I thought it would be cute to secretly prepare a gift, but I shouldn't have gone that far. Could this really be a new book by Madame Cosette, who had not published anything for several years? She was pleased that Dale remembered what she liked, but Enya was confused by the name. The Captive Empress was too similar to the novel into which she had been reborn. Having started reading the contents, Enya was stunned. The text stated that the main character understands that she has found herself in a novel, and in order to avoid the plot of the book, she decides to avoid the main character by refusing to marry the emperor. The heroine runs away from home to change the tragic ending of the original novel, and living as a wanderer to avoid the attention of the emperor, she meets a man. Enya thought about the main character, reborn in the novel, and her dangerous marriage to the emperor. The order came from His Majesty that the daughter of the Duke of Lockhart's family should enter the palace, and then running away from home. It was all terribly reminiscent of her life today. I read how, trying to avoid the emperor, she unexpectedly meets a man. Our heroine slammed the book shut and thought that even her meeting with Dale was described in detail. She was even afraid to imagine what would be written further on these pages. But on the other hand, it could be a chance to find something that will help her in the future. With bated breath, she flipped through a few more pages, but there was nothing there. Nothing at all. They were empty. And she thought that it couldn't be a coincidence. It all seemed so much like reality that she became worried, and for good reason. She thought that she should meet the author of the novel in person to dispel her doubts. Having decided what to do, she asked Dale where he got this book. He was puzzled, so I asked if there was something wrong with the book, but she didn't know how to explain the situation to her. She said she was incredibly captivated by the plot, and therefore couldn't wait for the continuation. Starting to get angry at Soho, our hero asked if Enya was saying the book wasn't finished. She said it was strange that after so many years, the author had published a book, but it was not finished. Dale told the story, hiding some details, but agreed to go to see Madame. A few days later, they were standing in front of the house, and Enya asked if it was here. But it was the house of a man who had been met near the hospital a few days earlier. Our heroine was extremely surprised, and Dale had no explanation for this misunderstanding. Hearing the voice, they turned around and saw a woman. It was probably the owner's wife. Enya remembered well how he said that his wife didn't really like receiving guests. So, smiling, she apologized for the sudden visit and explained that she was looking for someone. The woman behaved extremely unusually. It seemed as if she was scared. Then she quietly said, "It can't be." And a moment later, she called Enya's name. Our heroine looked at her mistress and noted her silver hair without a single spot. Moreover, she had an appearance that anyone would say that she looked like Enya's father. It was hard to believe, but the reality was that they met. It was our heroine's aunt, who was no less surprised than the others. While treating her guests to tea, she thanked them for helping her husband the other day. The miss replied that anyone would do the same, and finally realized that it was her aunt's husband. It dawned on her again why the tea had seemed so familiar to her that time. After all, they drank it in her family, and her aunt said that she used to take care of the tea tree. It's a very delicate variety, so it's likely Enya didn't drink it after she left. She added that when she ran away, she grabbed a few seeds and then asked how her grandfather was. Having said that she would drop by to see him later, she asked him not to tell anyone that she lived here. The niece promised to remain silent. Then the aunt asked what brought her to visit her. She came here to find Madame Cosette, but instead she met her aunt. She hesitated and then replied that she was actually looking for a writer. because she had a question. She was curious to know about the sequel and asked if the author's aunt knew Madame Cosette. The mistress of the house recognized the book and remembered the noble men who had visited her. They asked that if Madame Cosette had a new novel, then sell it to them. The answer they received was that apart from the books already published, she had nothing else. They were upset, and one said that his friend wanted to give the book to his beloved. His friend is an aristocrat who ran away with his bride against the will of his family and wants to please her. And as a token of gratitude, the lady who ran away with him wants a book by his favorite author as a gift. So they came to her. Despite all the inconveniences, she found it romantic. Then, the aunt realized that the friends who came were the friends of Enya's beloved. At this moment, our heroine remembered that she had completely forgotten to introduce her companion. The hostess of the house was glad to meet her, and Dale also replied that he was very glad to meet her. Enya said that when she received an order from the emperor, she ran away and met Dale. Auntie actually heard that this happened when Enya was 18. I thought that, from what my niece said, Dale knew what was going on, and they were married. And if you look at how happy they are together, it means they really love each other. She said out loud that she was happy for her niece, because she had met a good man. Having thanked him, our heroine thought that hearing these words made her a little embarrassed. But at the same time, it seemed to her as if she and Dale were officially recognized as a couple. Meanwhile, my lady asked if Enya had come to her because of the author of this book. And she can tell you that she has come to the right place, because she is Madame Cosette. The guest even jumped in surprise, which meant that her aunt had painted the captive empress. And she asked if the aunt remembered what the book was about a girl who moves into the novel. Milady replied that she had written it from the words of her niece, who was then about 7 years old. And she added that Enya always came up with such mystical and interesting stories. Our heroine didn't think this was logical, because she didn't yet know she was in a romance novel. She vaguely remembered how she communicated with her aunt, but she doesn't remember a single story. She didn't remember not only her aunt, but anything at all before the age of 7. She thought she was too young, but now she feels like someone erased her memories. Dale became worried. She looked strange. He asked if she was okay. Having answered that everything was fine, I thought that now there were more worries and questions. She hoped that meeting Madame Cosette would help her figure things out, but it turned out differently. The aunt also noticed that her niece looked anxious and asked about the fair. Enya didn't understand what they were talking about and received the answer that every year their family organizes a fair, and this year the emperor will be present at this annual event. Unable to contain herself, our heroine said that he usually doesn't attend such celebrations. In response, she heard that, apparently, she had not heard yet, but Hexagon had adopted the girl, and this was done in order to conclude a marriage alliance and improve relations with the palace. Enya couldn't believe her own ears. Could Duke Hexagon really do such a thing? But that was not all. My aunt said that rumors had spread among the aristocrats. The emperor intends to declare at the fair that the relationship with Lockhart is still strong, but if he didn't show up at the event, they'd say there was something wrong with the Lockharts, and this will therefore lead to the Duke of Hexagon's influence becoming stronger. Enya understood that the circumstances were such that she simply could not participate. The hostess of the house meanwhile spoke up, saying that they were in roughly the same situation, and she doesn't want to put pressure on her, but she's heard too much disturbing news. She ended by asking why Enya didn't come home this time. In the end, the maid's warning turned out to be correct. She would have to go to the capital. She had no other choice. She could not abandon her family when such a threat loomed. Our hero asked her if everything was okay with her. He was very worried about what was happening. She replied absent-mindedly that everything was fine, that she was just thinking for a while. Dale asked if she needed to return to the capital, and she hesitated before speaking. But he didn't let her speak and said that he would be fine and she could go, that he doesn't want to become a stumbling block between her and her relatives. A new expression flashed across his face when he said he would always be here. Enya thought that if she returned, she might never see Dale again. She could not ignore the actions of the Duke, who was planning to get closer to the Emperor. She felt ashamed in front of Dale, but her family could be in danger. She needed to be with them. Thanking him, she added that she promised to return to him as soon as possible. He smiled back and said, "Okay." He knew she couldn't do otherwise. Miss set off on her way back to her stepfather's house. She was both happy and sad. The maid Emma looked around with all her eyes, waiting for her mistress's carriage to appear. And although she was the only one who was in touch with her, this does not mean that she did not miss her. The joy of this meeting was mutual. Our heroine smiled sincerely at the maid. They quickly exchanged warm words, which they share after a long separation. Duke Lockhart also came out to greet his prodigal daughter, sadness on his brow. He said, finally returned, and Enya imagined this meeting the whole way. But now, in the heat of the moment, she unexpectedly fell on her face and said that she was wrong. The father was impressed by this action, but he felt awkward in front of the servants, so he asked her to get up. But she said that she would not get up until she forgave him, saying that even after so much time she was still just as stubborn. He extended his hand. Noting that it was enough that she looked healthy, he offered her some tea. They had a lot to talk about, but no one started the conversation. My lord broke the silence and asked if she had been hurt or ill while she was away from home. Having answered that no, I asked how he was doing, and he was doing just terribly. After all, who could he tell? His only daughter had run away from home, and there had been no news from her. In a more affectionate tone, he continued that, even given the circumstances, he was glad to see her. She was very sorry, but she did not go into details or explain the reason. He's just glad she understood. But she came home because she heard the news. Enya replied that she was going to talk to him about the emperor, but he stopped her. My lord said that she must know the reasons why the emperor would appear at the fair. And since His Majesty pays so much attention to this, everything should go smoothly. He continued that she was no longer a child, and that the last time the emperor had forgiven her rudeness. This means that he is not giving up on marriage, so he hopes she will change her mind. She wanted to tell him about Dale, but under the circumstances, it was impossible. She also couldn't tell about what would happen to the whole family if she agreed. What could happen if she married the emperor? She didn't want to lose her family. She said out loud that she understood, and that she could still respond under such difficult circumstances. She already missed Dale. Before leaving, he said that he would wait and believe in her. But what if she could never return, and her heart was breaking with pain? The day of the Lockhart family fair arrived, and guests kept arriving in a steady stream. False Lockhart thought that not much time had passed since the Marquis had been conducting his investigation. Hexagon used his power to hush up the matter, and she got involved in something similar again. Her uncle insisted that she didn't need to pretend, but simply be present at the fair. But the fact that she was paid a tidy sum won't make it any easier for her to rot in the Lockhart prison. The ladies discussed Lady Lockhart and why the emperor never married her. One lady suggested that she was apparently so ugly that His Majesty simply ran away. The fake thought that Lady Enya does not appear in society, but people are interested in her. The talk about her never stops, so her uncle sent her here to listen to what they say. But no matter what is discussed in society, Lady Enya lives in a completely different world. Then she heard someone ask about Viscountess Portnam, and she tensed. Someone added that it seems like the valuable items she sells are just ordinary herbs. She had already opened her mouth to respond to such blatant insolence, but she didn't have time. Because at that very moment, Lady Lockhart's arrival was announced. All eyes turned in that direction. Her face seemed familiar to the fake. She had a strange feeling that they had met before, but she couldn't remember where. And that was not all. The Duke's daughter, looking at her, immediately rushed towards her. Our heroine came up, and holding her head high, said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The fake lady added, leaning slightly so that no one else could hear. The girl wondered how it happened that the runaway lady found out about this story. Moreover, my uncle insisted that Duke Hexagon had long since hushed up all the fuss about this matter, so she decided that the best thing to do now was to refuse on every point. She said she didn't understand what they were talking about and was just selling herbs to lift one's spirits. Enya interrupted her, saying that enough of these sweet words, and that she didn't know what brought her here. But it would be better not to do anything stupid, and she doesn't want to dig through dirty laundry in front of people. Then I thought that there was definitely something wrong between the Duke and Lady Portnam. Maybe she just wanted to point out the pathetic state of the herbs, and then something caught her interest. These were memory leaves. They are used for torture, but they also help with amnesia. However, due to their toxicity, they kill nearby herbs, so they are rarely grown. This may help Enya regain her memories, but the mistake will cause side effects. She actually considered these leaves as a backup option and found them here. Having worked out a plan, our heroine invited Lady Portnam to have tea with her after the fair. She was naturally very surprised, but Enya thought that if she succeeded, she would definitely win. And she said that the lady would hardly want everyone to know how she had impersonated her. Having said that she would be waiting for him later, our heroine thought that she would have to prepare everything. Hexagon sent someone who pretended to be Lady Lockhart and used her as a spy. It was unpleasant for her to realize that the Duke considered her family so insignificant. But thanks to this unexpected meeting, Enya managed to get hold of the memory leaves. She thought of the hexagon, and at that moment, His Majesty's arrival was announced. As the daughter of the Duke and the master of the house, Enya was required by etiquette to greet the monarch. His face was hidden by a mask, but that golden hair and sapphire eyes were just like the original. Curtsying, she said that it was an honor for her to meet His Majesty. The thought occurred to her that this time they would manage not to fall in love with each other. Although some small part of her was curious about how they would meet again, she was worried that by running away, she had essentially rejected his proposal. And she was even pleasantly surprised that the emperor was extremely polite to her. However, she latched on to one of his words. He said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, but they had never met before, and she noticed the attention of those around her. She thought he was lying to the crowd, so she said they were honored by his presence. The emperor apologized that due to his health, he was unable to see her more often. For those around them, their conversation meant only one thing. They were confirming their engagement. Enya was tired of all the attention, but she politely thanked the monarch for his concern. She was glad that he didn't mention her escape, although now she would gladly run away again. But knowing his original personality, she guessed that he wouldn't let her slip away twice. She wondered what exactly he had in mind, and in response, His Majesty spoke again. He said that the fair is an official event where everyone sells their goods. After answering in the affirmative, Enya explained that all proceeds go to charity. Then he asked what Lady Lockhart had brought, and she remembered her tossing and turning. The emperor gave her all kinds of gifts, not only flowers, but also expensive jewelry. She frantically went through her things, but the only valuables she had were his gifts. Just thinking about selling something he had given her at the fair made her feel sick. The thought came to mind that this could end very badly for her and her family. Emma brought a toy that she loved as a child and suggested it as an option. But this was certainly better than selling the emperor's gift by mistake, and she agreed. After washing the soft bunny, she tied a bow with a large ruby and small diamonds. It looked original and emphasized the dignity of the event organizer. Enya said she brought a stuffed rabbit, but it was unlikely to interest the emperor. But our heroine could not imagine that everything would turn out exactly the opposite. He only said this toy, and then rolled out an indecently large sum. It was so unexpected that Enya was speechless. After this, the fair came to an end, and the emperor left without saying anything more. Left alone with the maid, my lady asked for the umpteenth time why. For what reason did His Majesty pay so much money for a simple plush bunny? She said that she found it strange that this rabbit broke the price record. Moreover, His Majesty brought the precious sword of the first emperor to the fair. Thus, 2 records were broken at once on this day, which was simply unthinkable, and she could not understand how it was possible to buy a toy that cost twice as much as a sword. However, the maid had an idea and said that apparently the emperor wanted it this way, and she reminded me of the right promised to the one who offers the highest price at the fair. Emma knew the rules for such events well, and declared that this was a right of demand. The value of the Lockhart Fair was somewhat different, as it was charitable, and the highest bidder was given the right to request anything from the Lockhart house. It was part of the original, but Enya forgot about it because her mother did it. The lady guessed that the emperor now had the right to demand, and that was his purpose. It wasn't enough for him to bring her home. Now he could ask for whatever he wanted. Our heroine thought with horror that there was no other way out, and she would have to get married. But that's what she thought. His Majesty was occupied with other thoughts. He was immersed in the past. Lady Lockhart thanked her guest for coming to have tea with her. She agreed, thinking that in reality, she simply hadn't managed to make her escape. She tried while everyone was distracted by the emperor, but the guards were vigilant. Enya said that, judging by what the guest was selling, she was interested in herbs. Then she started talking about the greenhouse, where there are so many herbs that a panacea could be created. However, Lady Portnam has medicinal herbs that are not even in this greenhouse, that she was interested in some of the components. That's why she wanted to talk. But to avoid complications, she reminded him that she knew about the fake lady. She asked, probably curiously, how she knew that Portnam was in that boutique. And she finished her thought with a question. Hadn't they crossed paths there once? She added that she was surprised when the lady who pretended to be her came to the fair. Enya got to the point and said that she was either being bold or underestimating the Lockhart family. The guest was shocked, because it turns out that she did something similar to a real lady. Portnam asked for forgiveness, promising to leave quietly, and if she had offended him, then to leave the country. Having said that running away would not help in this situation, she asked if it wasn't clear what was happening. Our heroine added that she knew that this was done on the orders of Duke Hexagon, and if the guest says why she was sent to the fair, she will take the leaves and let her go. Then she pressed her a little, saying that if she got to the bottom of it, she had no other choice. She said that she was from an old aristocratic family that followed Hexagon, but after the Duke lost power, they all had to perform ordinary tasks. When the family became poor, the Duke began to order completely different matters to be dealt with. At first, everything seemed like a simple investigation, until they ordered me to pretend to be a lady. Even then, she thought it was too much. But due to her dependence on the Duke, she had no choice. Enya realized that the Duke had been waiting for a long time to take advantage of the weakness. Portnum confirmed that Hexagon began to act harshly after the lady escaped. The guest started talking about how she really didn't know anything. She was just following orders, and she couldn't refuse, because if something happened to her, no one would look after the land. Where her parents are buried, they died in an accident several years ago. Since her uncle became the current Viscount, the family's fortunes have become unstable. So the Duke and Viscount openly began to use the young lady as a pawn. There is also a high probability that they have planted another spy in case of failure, and as soon as this pawn is no longer useful, it will be killed to keep the secret. And the fact that they met in person will surely soon be known to Hexagon. So Enya said she wouldn't tell her father anything about Lady Portnum. She can help her escape so that the Duke can no longer use her for his own purposes. Afterwards, she explained that Hexagon most likely already knew about this private meeting, and a man like the Duke is unlikely to let go of someone who has failed his task. If Lady Portnum simply returns, her life will be in danger, but there is a way out. The guest was delighted and said that she would give leaves and do anything to survive. Enya put forward the conditions to enter the palace as a maid and report about the Emperor, and also to tell her everything he hears about the girl who was recently adopted by the Duke. Our heroine said she needed someone to dig up information, and the lady fit the bill. And instead of going back and spending the rest of his life hiding from two families, wouldn't it be better to work under the protection of the more secure imperial palace? With this document, surveillance of the Emperor will not be a problem for some time. Sometimes Cassian shares information about the Emperor with her, but he is her closest friend. And now it will be more useful for her to get a more objective source of information. Emma was worried about her mistress, whether she would be okay after the memory leaves. Our heroine said that she herself would not want to use them, but there was no other choice. But there was another problem. The effect of the leaves lasted for a certain time, and at this time, in order to stimulate, you need to be in a place associated with memories. To avoid wasting time, our heroine asked where she often went as a child. Emma replied, "It seems a lady who often visited the imperial palace with the Duke." As Enya expected, she didn't remember this, but this fact gave her an idea. Considering the Empress's imprisonment, there is some connection between her and the palace, and she asked Emma to tell her father that she wanted to accompany him to the palace. She hoped that nothing would happen, since she was going to the palace of her own free will. The Emperor's assistants discussed how he seemed to be in a good mood today. He recently scolded them furiously for a book he gave a lady for her birthday. Soho said that the Emperor was apparently pleased with the item he bought at the fair. Getty asked if it was probably for the best, since the lady had returned home safely. Noticing that his knights were talking nonsense, the Emperor demanded that they stop. Then the deputy commander asked whether the Emperor would take part in the hunting festival, and he added that there were some things that needed to be discussed, since he was taking part in this year's festival. Getty continued, asking if His Majesty would invite Lady Lockhart as a partner. Soho noted that since the gift had failed, it would be good to show off at the festival. For these speeches, the knights were punished and looked at the wall so that the Emperor could not see their faces. But as they continued chatting, Soho reminded them that there is an unspoken tradition at the festival. The winner of the hunting festival invites the person he likes on a date. And doesn't His Majesty need to win the favor of the lady as Emperor too? There is a festival in the Imperial Forest, but it is dangerous because there are monsters there. During the festival, monsters are destroyed, and those with the best results receive gold and a medal. It has become a tradition for the winner to invite the girl he likes on a date. Even Viscount Lockhart was lucky enough to marry the Duchess with the help of this festival. Soho said that this might be a chance to build a relationship with Lady Lockhart. And since the Lockhart family history is well known, the lady probably knows it too. The lady may not have any particular hopes and dreams about hunting, but anything is possible. Suddenly, some stranger will propose, or some rich man will invite you on a date. Soho continued that for some reason the young lady was avoiding marriage with the emperor, but this could be a great chance to leave a more positive impression. Therefore, at the hunting festival, His Majesty must win the heart of the lady. A few days later, our heroine compared the imperial palace to 10 ducal ones, because it was huge and she didn't know if she could handle it in the time allotted. I remembered the maid's words that the effect would only last 48 hours. Emma warned the lady that if she brewed it stronger, the effect would last longer, but this was very dangerous because memory leaves stimulate brain function. Enya knew this, but since she often came and went from the palace, she might find a clue. Only hoping for this, our heroine decided on this adventure and was now following her father. She won't be able to walk around the entire palace anyway, so she needs to choose key places. The father plucked up his courage and asked if she had gotten up so early today just for this. Just to accompany, her actions lately seem strange. Or the case of the letter of recommendation for Lady Portnam to be hired as a maid. My Lord Marcus glared at her and asked her to tell him what she had in mind this time. She replied that since she had upset him with her escape, she could at least please him in another way. The father thought for a moment, and our heroine thought that the lie must have been too obvious. But my lord did not insist. He thanked her for seeing him off. Then, the Duke wished his daughter a safe journey home and walked away quickly. Having said that they would see each other at home, Enya, for some reason, felt guilty towards her father. But on the other hand, if she wanted to protect her beloved family, then she had no choice. After some time, she thought that remembering everything turned out to be much more difficult. She visited every place where guests are allowed, from the reception area to the banquet hall. She fooled the servants, but nothing connected with the palace came to mind. I even began to understand why my father always said that she was a problem. She asked the palace staff who recognized her not to say anything to the emperor. However, sooner or later he would find out. And before that, she needed to remember at least something. One old building did not fit in with the palace, and, judging by its height, was a tower or a prison. But one thing was clear, it had been abandoned for a long time and looked creepy. For some reason, the building seemed familiar to her. Was it somehow connected with her childhood? Inside, it looked like a residence, but judging by the walls and furniture, there had been a fire. As she walked through the halls, she wondered who could possibly live in this place. Stopping in front of the portrait, she noticed the golden hair and eyes like the sea. There was no doubt, because judging by his appearance and magnificent clothes, he was the emperor. But his aura was very different from the current one, which means it was the previous one that was depicted. There were two people in the portrait, the deceased emperor and a man who was also no longer alive. They had different mothers, and although they were brothers, they differed in character and appearance. When the gentle late emperor suddenly died, the cruel older brother ascended to the throne. He became a tyrant, and the current emperor, unable to tolerate this, rose in rebellion. After the despot was overthrown and died, peace and prosperity finally came to the empire. He was hailed as a hero who killed the monster, but the emperor killed his own father. Also, considering his cruelty in the original, he was no better than a madman to her. Reflecting on all this, our heroine did not notice the appearance of the culprit of her thoughts. His expression was hidden behind the mask, but he was extremely surprised by her presence. Having greeted him, I wondered why he was here. Could this really be his secret hideout? The emperor said that he had not heard that she was planning to visit the palace today. After apologizing, she explained that she was seeing her father off, and then decided to look around a bit. He allowed her to stay. Then she asked if it wouldn't disturb his rest, to which the emperor replied that he himself had offered to stay, and Enya apologized again. Then he asked if she didn't like scary places. People don't come here out of curiosity. Having said that she had taken the wrong turn, she wondered how he knew that she didn't like scary things, and she thought that even she understood that this excuse sounded implausible. When he asked her if she knew what this place was, she replied that she could not know about it. The emperor revealed that this place was built by the previous emperor to imprison someone, but since that emperor died, he now uses it as a personal resting place. He said that she couldn't recognize it now, because it had changed so much. It sounded like she had been here before, and it made her feel a little uneasy. Having said that nothing she remembered was a pleasant memory, he changed the subject. The emperor spoke of what he wanted to talk about, and she was afraid that it was about the proposal again. She wanted to avoid it, but he asked her to be his partner at the hunting festival. There was so much surprise in her question, "What?" that the emperor took it for a categorical refusal. So he said that at the fair, he had the right to ask the Lockhart family for whatever he wanted. His offer to be his partner at the festival amazed our heroine. The first thing she thought was why he didn't ask her to marry him, and he wished for her to become his partner at this annual spring event. After getting over the initial shock, she asked if she could ask him one question. She asked if he was really willing to spend his right on something like that. He also asked if he asked her to be her partner without him. Would she agree? She thought that if it weren't for the recent circumstances, she would have come up with a whole bunch of excuses. And even though she came back, he did not use his power and strength. And he took advantage of his right in this way. And isn't the emperor attentive to her? Enya thought that in that case, all she could do was be honest with him in return. She said out loud that she thought he would use his right to get married. And despite receiving his proposal, she acted recklessly and impulsively, having thereby betrayed not only respect, but also trust. He showed understanding in response. Therefore, to be honest, she cannot become his wife because she does not want children. In the original novel, it was said that the emperor did not immediately become obsessed with his wife, and he became even more insane after he shared the marriage bed with the empress. So now he should be in a normal condition, and we can talk to him. Marriages are for procreation, and she decided to use this as a reason to refuse. After all, if she says that she doesn't want to have children, then he might change his mind about getting married. However, he asked that if he said he didn't want children, she would reconsider his proposal. And he answered negatively to her question, "Isn't this one of the duties of the empress? If she doesn't want to have children, then he has no desire to pressure her." Our heroine couldn't believe that she had just thrown out one of the reasons for refusal. Enya asked why His Majesty waited for her for years when she ran away from home. The answer was that he would tell her everything if she agreed to become a partner at the festival. She agreed, and upon returning home, received an official invitation from him. So instead of regaining her memories, she was stuck in the estate. Thoughts of Dale kept coming back to her, making it difficult to concentrate on her embroidery. However, our heroine stubbornly continued to toil with a needle and thread in her hands. Her brother, seeing her work, asked if she was going to give it to the emperor, and if she still wants to give a gift, then it's better to start over and throw this away. This could not only bring shame to the family, but also cause His Majesty to faint. Enya didn't like handicrafts, and she didn't have the heart for it, so nothing turned out beautifully. She tried to get out of it and asked her brother if she could become his partner. Unfortunately, Samuel couldn't help her because he couldn't go because of his injured leg. Only then did she notice his leg and asked how this had happened, to which the brother asked that she had recently returned, and that was all she had to ask him. However, he said that he went to check on the monsters, but this year there were too many of them, and as the battle dragged on, he unknowingly made a small mistake. Enya asked with concern that the number had increased, but her brother asked her not to worry. Their numbers had dwindled, and she would not be harmed, but she did not hear the last words. She wondered if she had walked so much in the morning that her head was hurting. Samuel saw that his sister was not well, and she was simply lost in her memories. Our heroine saw some boy who pushed her off the soft sofa. Moving further away, little Enya said that it was clear from him that he also wanted to lie down here. She realized that she was seeing herself as a child, and she remembered that she always played alone. Her parents were always busy, and she had no friends her age. So where did the boy come from? The memories disappeared as quickly as they appeared, and her brother was in front of her again. He asked if she was injured, then added that she had fainted, which had frightened him. After replying that she was fine, she explained that she had suddenly felt dizzy, and Samuel, noting that she had been looking tired lately, advised her to rest. She said that she would go to her room, but her brother decided to clarify one point. He said he didn't know why she was so opposed to marrying His Majesty, but as the brother asks not to put too much pressure on himself, he will always support his sister. His friendly words deeply touched our heroine. She had no idea how worried he was about her. And then the day of the hunting festival arrived, and Enya thought that her end had come. While searching for information to learn more about my childhood, I completely forgot about embroidery. So I finished the embroidery in a terrible hurry, so it looked terrible. Enya even thought about asking the maid to buy her some scarf. Then I remembered that when I was sewing Dale's gloves, it was fun, and I stopped. She was so confused that she didn't look where she was going, and as a result, she bumped into the knight. He asked her if she was okay, and without knowing why, she called him Dale. She quickly came to her senses and thought that she had made a mistake. The young man and Dale had similar auras. The knight came to his senses and, apologizing, introduced himself as Donald from Mason County. He said that he served under the command of Mr. Lockhart and was glad to meet him. She wondered why meeting someone like Dale calmed her down so much. Donald said that after seeing her in person, He realized that the rumors that the young master appreciated her were true, and that probably because of her beauty, he was afraid to show her to the world. These words amused her. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice saying that he was extremely surprised. Cassian said he didn't think it was her, and asked who the guy next to her was. The Marquise continued that he had stepped away for literally a minute, and then something like this happened. When the knight asked if they knew each other, the Marquise replied that they were more than just acquainted. One could say they have a deep relationship, and asked what brought the young man to the lady. The last was said in such a tone that Donald hastened to retreat. He explained that he thought his good friend's wife was having a problem. She didn't want rumors to spread. It was enough that they said she was the emperor's bride. And Cassian asked her not to worry, because he would shut the mouth of that impudent knight. Our heroine asked what brought the Marquis here, and if everything was okay with Dale. He replied that Dale, like a faithful animal waiting for its owner, was counting the days until her return. And he is here because he was invited as the head of the tower, responsible for the festival's security. Thanks to the medicine from Caristella, he was able to take part in the hunting festival. Enya asked him to be careful, as the medicine was still in the development stage. He replied that he himself did not want to die, and that 5 magicians were ensuring his safety. At the festival, 5 mages selected by the palace erect a barrier to protect against monsters. Maintaining a magical barrier requires a huge amount of mana and skill. The imperial family prepared and supplied the mages with magical amplifiers. And since the emperor was personally involved, they invited Cassian, whose skill was widely known. But today was a cloudy day, and her brother's words about the number of monsters worried her. It wasn't that she didn't trust the Marquise, but she still decided to discuss Samuel's words. But she didn't have time. Because the arrival of the emperor was announced, he was wearing a mask again. She thought it was natural, since so many aristocrats had gathered today. She was really worried about one thing. Would the emperor be comfortable hunting in a mask? Meanwhile, His Majesty entered the tent, and our heroine and the Marquise greeted him. The emperor thanked Lady Lockhart for agreeing to become his partner. Cassian loved to play pranks, so he asked her if she had a present prepared. And although he said it with a completely innocent look, she was ready to kill him. She whispered that she wanted to give the handkerchief back when she was alone with the emperor. And now, with everyone watching, she couldn't back down. She had no choice. Having handed over the handkerchief, she thought that she had really done everything in her power. She said out loud that she wished victory for His Majesty, but the reaction of those around her was deplorable. True, no one said a word while she said that she embroidered it with all her heart. My brother's remark that such embroidery would offend the imperial family came to mind, but she still finished saying that she embroidered day and night, all the time thinking about him. The emperor repeated her last words, and promising to win, left. The Marquis said that he almost died trying not to laugh, and what a monster she had embroidered. Enya retorted that if he liked monsters so much, she could turn him into one. Cassian thanked her, adding that seeing something like that was more than enough for him. She asked him if it was time for him to get down to business, otherwise they might think he was having fun. He replied that since he had already managed to have a little fun, he would go and said goodbye. Our heroine could finally be alone for a while, and most importantly, in silence. She was half forced to participate in the festival, but she was interested in the emperor's answer. What will he answer her? Why did he wait these 4 years? And maybe she will understand why he is obsessed with her. She was distracted by a strong smell. It was the smell of illness, like that of a sick person. It was the same first aid kit that is issued to every tent in the camp. But after the bottle with the medicine fell and the liquid spilled, the smell intensified. And mixed with it was an artificial scent that she normally doesn't smell. Something was much sharper, as if an alarm, invisible and obsessive, was awakening uneasiness. Following her feelings, Enya began to look around and realized where the smell was coming from. It came from one person. There were people around him. They were asking what was going on. It could be contagious, so it was necessary to find out how many people had been in contact with the magician. The magician cast protective magic on each participant, so the number was not small. One of the guards ran towards our heroine and asked her to hide in a safe place. She replied that the festival might have to be stopped. The barrier might collapse. After all, the formation of the magicians was disrupted, and she asked not to worry about her. She was fine. Enya was a doctor, so she began to remember where she had already encountered such symptoms. However, there was no time to think. A huge monster was raging behind the barrier. He opened his toothy mouth and tried to break through the invisible barrier with his head. When this trick failed, the monster began to wave its long tail. Enya thought that the magical system was broken, and if the monster attacked, the barrier would collapse. Her heart sank as she could only watch as this huge creature rushed towards her. The head of the magic tower also saw this scene, so he began to act decisively. His natural magic, increased several times by the amplifier, sparkled above the attacking monster. Cassian was truly a high-ranking master, and it was all over in a couple of minutes. After saying that the magic amplifier was truly useful, Marquis Schultz winked at Enya